What's up, bitches? Welcome to the show. I actually probably shouldn't have started the show by saying welcome, bitches, because YouTube is cracking down. It's actually pretty bad. I don't want to get into like all the details because there's a lot to discuss. Let me tweet this out real quick. Share. Boom. Boom. Okay, I tweeted it. Yeah, I learned something yesterday about what YouTube is up to now, and oh my goodness. Ugh. There's like a list of shit that they send you that they're like, okay, you shouldn't really do this, this, or this. Like, don't curse, don't, have sexual content. So, I mean, obviously, I don't have sexual content, but like, cursing's a bad idea, and X, Y, and Z is a bad idea, and don't do that. And if you try to do that, then you're going to get demonetized, expect to be demonetized. And, to see it, it's one thing when you know they're doing it, but they don't lay it out so explicitly. Once they actually lay it out explicitly and they put it on paper and you read it, you're like, oh no. Because, I mean, we knew they were doing it, but it was still at least somewhat theoretical because, every now and then I would curse and then magically the video wouldn't be demonetized. And I'm like, oh, okay. So maybe that's not like a really rigid, hard and fast rule. Now it's actually written down. And when it's written down, you're like, oh God, what are they doing? So, haven't done a secular talking smack in a while. We're here. Let me just set up everything on the back end here. I'm going to go to your super chats right off the bat. So I took like a 2-show break. And yeah, felt good. Felt good to get a little bit of a break from the news, but I see that the bullshit is still happening. The first thing I saw when I opened up Twitter after taking a break from both Twitter and the show, it was a 2-show break, so that's like a week and a half type situation. First thing I saw was they're trying to get us into war with Iran. Why can't I come back to like puppies and rainbows and shit? Why can't I come back to like, there's no bad news? Instead, the first thing I see is like, the U.S. Pompeo claiming that Iran attacked a Japanese fucking oil tanker or some shit. And the owner of the oil tanker was like, no, what you're saying didn't happen that way. You said there were mines planted on the boat. It was something that was like shot at us through the air. And so basically the owner is coming out and saying the U.S. is full of shit and they're trying to take advantage of this for political reasons. You and I know they've been pushing towards war for a while now. But that was literally the first thing I saw when I decided to take a couple peeks at Twitter real quick, even though I was on a little bit of a break. A wee bit of a break, lass. Gotta throw in a big seltzer advertisement within the first like 3 minutes. Let's see. I got a little text message here. Okay. Anyway, super chat's already rolling in. Goodness gracious me. Thoughts on Bernie's democratic socialism speech? So that's a good question. Thank you for that question, Tech Knight. I have a little bit of a strategic disagreement with Bernie on that. Now, on the one hand, Bernie's like the moral compass of not just the country, but like the moral compass of the left. He's what we aspire to be. He's got such a consistent record for so long. And, he's a one-trick pony. He goes out there and he harps away on the things he believes in. And in many ways, we need to be learning from him. It's not like up to us to critique him. Now, on the other hand, I still think it's fair game, since we all want him to win, to try to be as objective as possible and steer the campaign in the best direction we could possibly steer it to give him the best chance of winning. I said a long time ago from early on that I thought Bernie should have never really described himself as a democratic socialist. And the reason for that is just accuracy. I don't think he is a democratic socialist. democratic socialism, the traditional definition, is a post-capitalist ideology, like a fully post-capitalist ideology. And Bernie Sanders, basically to sum it up, unless he's not telling us the truth, and I think he is telling us the truth in terms of what his policy beliefs are, he really is just a social democrat. I mean, he really is. He's not like totally post-capitalism. And, you know, I don't know, maybe if you talk to Bernie, he says, no, I do in my heart of hearts believe in a fully post-capitalist society. Okay. But everything he describes to us on a daily basis is actually not fully post-capitalist. He's not really like a hardcore revolutionary. He's more of like a reformer who's on the brink of becoming a revolutionary. Does that make sense to you guys? Because that's the way I would describe Bernie. That's also the way I'd describe my politics. They're actually relatively moderate in an international sense. And I think he just would have saved himself a headache if he just said, I believe in social democracy instead of democratic socialism. Now, the right is going to attack him no matter what he says, because they just disagree with Medicare-for-All and free college and a living wage and raising taxes on the rich. So they would accuse him of being a communist and a socialist no matter what. I mean, they accused Obama of being a fucking communist, which is insanity. But I do think that the criticism wouldn't land as much among regular people if he just said, well, no, I believe in social democracy. I think we can have like really strict oversight of the system we have, and we can take a bunch of things that are in the private sector, move them to the public sector, and we can give everybody a good life by going down that path, as opposed to, totally moving to the workers owning all the means of production. So I just think for accuracy's sake, he should have said, I believe in social democracy. Now, in terms of like what Bernie actually means by democratic socialism, I think he knocks it out of the park every time he talks about it. I think he's brilliant. He goes out there and he says, hey, here's what we believe in. Here's, 10 basic planks of what we believe in, and this is what we need to fight for, and this is what I mean by democratic socialism. Yeah, I mean, I can respect it. When you actually listen to him, average people go, oh shit, he's looking out for me. I told everybody. I heard from my brother-in-law that his friend texted him. This is a guy who's been a Republican his whole life, voted for Trump. And he said, if Bernie's the nominee in the Democratic Party, I will vote for him against Donald Trump. So what you have is the best of both worlds. You have a guy who can hold the Democratic base, Bernie Sanders can, because he's for what the left base is for, full stop. But then also, he gets crossover voters. Why? Because he's willing to go to where they're at and talk to them. So he's willing to go on Fox News and say, hey, listen, here's why I'm right, and here's why what you're hearing on a daily basis is wrong. Now, even if you don't want to get them to agree with you on everything, they're going to respect you. They're going to respect you. They're going to go, oh, okay, well, at least he's telling me what he believes. I hear you. I hear you. I might not agree with you on everything, but I respect the fact you're coming into my house and you're talking to me. And this applies doubly for going to, the Rust Belt and doing rallies there and talking about all the lost manufacturing jobs. So he's the best of both worlds. Now, again, if I was in control of Bernie Sanders' campaign from early on, but you would have had to go all the way back to 2015 for me to have this conversation with him. I just would have told him, hey, dude, just tell people what you actually are, which is a social democrat. You're not a democratic socialist. So just say that because it's accurate. And then you also kind of take the sting out of it when the right tries to portray you as like even further left than you are. It's just easier to combat it if you know your terms, and you could just kind of swat it aside in one fell swoop by saying, you just don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Now, they don't know what they're talking about either way, and they would attack him either way, but I think it would land less if he was just accurate with the label up front. But the speech, having said that, the speech I think was great. Is Trump a menace to his own people? I don't really know what that means. Are you saying, is Trump a menace to Republicans? Is Trump a menace to white people? Is Trump a menace to the people in his cabinet? I think he's a menace to everybody. I don't think he knows what he's doing. I don't think he has a coherent ideology. I think he's vapid. I think that he just wanted to be president to get that title of president. I think in his heart of hearts, he actually kind of looks up to somebody like Hillary Clinton, because Hillary Clinton was beloved by the establishment. They love her so much. And he just wanted that pat on the head from the establishment. He wanted that pat on the head from like the elite crowd, the country club crowd, because he never got it. He was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, and it was kind of clear he was a buffoon from early on. And so that's what he wants, their approval. And that's why he does stuff like the deregulation and the tax cuts. And they get everything they want, and then they still don't like him. So it's kind of funny. Like, he gives the establishment everything they want, and then they're still like, okay, we agree with you on everything, but god damn it with the mean tweets. Reel it in a little bit. So I do think he's a menace to his own people. Should we be scared of Elizabeth Warren climbing in the polls? No, not really. I wouldn't be scared of that. I mean, I actually think it's a reflection of her strategy to this point being good. So when Elizabeth Warren did like the DNA test thing and stooped down to Trump's level, that was like, what are you doing? Ugh, what are you doing? It just came across as like petty. And Trump is the king of pettiness, but that's all he's ever been. So it's like people kind of give him a pass for it because that's Trump. But when you're Elizabeth Warren and you're this like professor lady and you're supposed to be serious and then you do something like that, people just kind of cringed at that. So what she's done since then has been, I'm just going to release policy proposal after policy proposal after policy proposal. And she soars when she talks about tax policy and when she talks about Wall Street policy. That's her wheelhouse. Now, the sad thing about Elizabeth Warren is that on foreign policy, she's pretty disastrous. I don't think she's anywhere near as good as Bernie or Tulsi on foreign policy. And so there's a gaping hole in her left politics. I think that on tax policy and Wall Street policy, she's just as good as Bernie and Tulsi, but on foreign policy, she's lacking. But I think that the reason she's soaring in the polls is because of all the policy stuff she's been releasing. But I'm not scared of it. No, I wouldn't say I'm scared of it. I think it would be, ultimately it'd be a great thing if at the end of the race, it came down to a race between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. I mean, obviously I'm team Bernie Sanders and I'll argue for that until the cows come home. But if at the end, the last two people remaining are Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, you should, take a sigh of relief because we're avoiding a worst case scenario where you say like, the C tier candidates are leading, whether it be a Biden or a Kamala Harris, who we know are fully corporate Democrats. Then there's the B tier of Elizabeth Warren, where she's got like one foot in the left camp and the other foot in the centrist camp. And then you have the A tier, which, you could argue is Bernie and Tulsi. And maybe throw Yang in the B tier because he means well, but he is just too libertarian for my liking. But I think he does mean well. Like, he's actually an outsider and he's pushing for his philosophy, which, okay, credit to him. I don't agree with all of it, but I agree with some of it. But anyway, if you're down to an A tier candidate and a B tier candidate, and those are your last two options, you should be happy, not upset. But am I afraid of her surpassing Bernie? No, I'm not afraid of that. No, I think he's a much better candidate, and I think his strategy is just as good, if not better, than hers. Looking forward to a president that makes more than just my life hard. Hashtag Tulsi 2020. Oh, you didn't just say that. Yes, you did. If this video wasn't demonetized already, it has officially been demonetized. YouTube is just going to take all of these super chats. But that was funny. Damn, Kyle, you're pretty cool. What's your credit score? Mediocre. I'd say mediocre. What I do, and I was actually just talking about Corin with this on Kyle and Corin. That'll be released tomorrow, by the way. But I have most of my stuff, all the stuff I can put on autopay, I put on autopay, because if I didn't put it on autopay, my credit score would be 0. But because there's no way every month I have to pay all these fucking bills, like every month. Are you kidding me? I can't even like force myself to eat breakfast sometimes. And you want me to fucking remember to pay bills every month? So I just had to put most of my shit on autopay. And so that'll keep the credit score somewhat solid. But then the few things I have to pay on my own, that brings down the credit score. So I'd say I have like a mediocre credit score. But thank you for that random ass question. Okay, let's keep scrolling here. Thank you for everybody who's thrown in the super chats here. Love you, Kyle, from Cornwall, England. First timer. Oh, very cool. I would like to ask you, how you feel in the rainy months. I know the winter is rainy in England. How do you feel during those months? Because I can tell you, just from my own experience here. Right now, it's June in New York. Usually it's June in New York. That was ridiculous. Right? Well, it is June, but usually it's like sunny and nice here. In the past 3 days, it's been like gray. And I'm like, oh, of course. When I decided to take a few days off, it was fucking gray all the time, of course. For a guy who golfs, it's fucking gray all the time. Thank you. But it's like miserable. Once you get to day 3 of it being gray, you're like, fuck all of you. Wasn't Assange with his backlash theory ultimately correct, though? Would JDs exist if not for Trump? The answer is yes, they would exist. Because I already knew that I was miserable on election day. Like, if Hillary won, my reaction, okay, let me be careful with how I talk about this here. With Trump winning, I was just like, holy fuck. This is terrifying, and I can't believe he won. I did a segment the next day titled something like, "This is who you just elected," and I went through all of his like policies and the shit he said, and I was like, what have you done? But like, I was so hard on Hillary too, and for good reason. And if she won, I wouldn't have been happy. Maybe I would have been slightly less miserable, but I definitely wouldn't have been happy, because that's just like the stranglehold of neoliberalism and centrism just eating the Democratic Party, and fucking it just also destroying the country along with Republicans. So we had to do something. I wasn't going to, like, as Hillary presidency wouldn't have sit nicely with me. So I would have had to do something. And so the wheels would have been cranking on that either way. And also, I don't think you're not giving enough credit with the idea of the backlash theory. That doesn't give enough credit to marginal differences. Like, that doesn't, the idea of like, oh, it'll be so bad that it'll get better. It's like, okay, but you're also just admitting that it'll get so bad. Like, to agree to the backlash theory, it's almost like you have to agree that everything will get so insanely shitty. And I'm never in favor of making things worse so they could maybe get better. I'm just in favor of making things better. So, I always thought that backlash theory was a little absurd, because it also just disregards minor differences. It disregards the tiny areas that are actually not so tiny, where you would have even a better presidency from a Hillary presidency. So, as terrible as Hillary Clinton was, nobody thinks she would have pulled out of the Paris climate agreement. Nobody thinks that. And like, that is huge, even though she gets a, what was the thing I said? I forget the numbers I used, but I said something along the lines of, if they're both my students and I'm a professor and I grade Hillary Clinton, she might get a grade of like a 27, but Donald Trump gets a grade of like a 6. Like, 27 is more than 6. They are both failing grades. But would you rather have a 27 or a 6? The answer is pretty obvious, isn't it? I mean, for your average, you're going to want that 27 instead of that 6. So there is a difference there. And I just see it as like quantitative and mathematical, and like to not acknowledge that when you look at it like it's math, the answer is clear. I think that's a little silly. And I think that that's kind of the thinking that Assange was engaged in. Now, having said that, as I've stated repeatedly, I don't care. Like, I don't care what his motivations were. He was right to release the DNC emails because it's true. The stuff he released was true, and truth is always a defense. But I just don't agree with his broader theory on politics, because the idea of making something better so it can, making something worse so it can maybe get better. No, how about we just always try to make it better and always try to make it as good as possible? I'm always in favor of in the context of U.S. politics, I'm always in favor of the furthest left candidate that's available, because I always want to try to make things better. I never want to move in the wrong direction to maybe move in the right direction. Do you play an instrument? I play the piano, as evidenced by my profile. No, Christian, I do not play an instrument. And it's actually very funny you bring that up, because Corin and I just talked about that on the Kyle and Corin podcast. I haven't had anybody ask me if I play an instrument like maybe ever in my life. And then randomly today, 2 people, you and Corin, both asked me if I've ever played an instrument. I think the most I've ever played is I played the recorder in middle school, which was just part of the curriculum. And then I think my uncle one Christmas got me like a keyboard, and I never played it because I'm a dickhead. If you had to go one-on-one in the octagon with any Republican politician, who would you battle and why? Damn, that's a great question. Probably Ted Cruz. because he's wrong about 99% of stuff, and he's like arrogantly wrong, which is the worst kind of wrong. It's one thing to be wrong and be like humble about it. I kind of sense that from a guy like Ben Carson, like, oh, I don't know what I'm talking about. Like that he's bad, but it's not as infuriating as a guy like Ted Cruz. Now, some of you might respond and say, well, what about that thing with him and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on Twitter recently, where they like, we're going to work together on something? You know, my response to that is, AOC is right about like, oh, let's ban lobbyists or whatever her idea is, but it's not going to have the impact they want it to have. Once you ban lobbyists, it just lobbyists just lobby under a different name. So the idea of just banning lobbyists isn't the answer. There are other ways to attack that same problem where you actually have a better outcome. And I think that the reason why Ted Cruz was like, oh, I'll work with you on that is because it's a good way for Ted Cruz to appear once in his life populist by saying, me, I'm against lobbyists, while not effectively doing anything. Like, I don't think AOC knows that this proposal that Ted Cruz is agreeing to work with her on is totally toothless, but it is. And there are other ways to try to fix the same problem, other ways that have teeth. And once you propose a way to go after lobbyists and go after corruption that actually could work, he will flip like that and he'll never want to work with you on it. So, yeah, probably Ted Cruz because he's slimy and he's smarmy and he's the worst. And I would want to battle him. And also, I could easily kick his ass. There's no doubt about that. Doughboy Ted Cruz. Do you believe the idea that harsher the punishment for one, the less likely others will commit the crime? No, because the evidence points in the other direction. So where I might disagree with some of my lefty friends here is that I don't think that that's a crazy idea in theory. Like when I read it, as you wrote that out, as I read it, I go, oh, that's certainly possible. Like it's possible that, you know, the old head on a stick theory. Like, well, if you show everybody, hey, if you do this shit, we're going to fuck you up. Look, a head's on a stick. We're warning you. Don't do X, Y, and Z. Like the idea of that doesn't sound crazy because you're making everybody fall in line. You're scaring them straight, basically. But it just turns out that that's not what actually happens in the real world, because when you look at the model of Scandinavia, they have a much lower recidivism rate. So when somebody commits a crime, they're much less likely to commit another crime later on in life and go back in prison. And, you know, one of the main reasons for that is their prison systems are very humane and they're really geared towards rehabilitating people. So in other words, you don't harshly punish people who commit a crime. You basically take them in, explain to them why what they did was wrong, and basically kill them with kindness and humanity to make them realize that, hey, listen, we're all better than that as a society, and we're going to make it so that you see the light, and we're going to make it so you go, why did I do that? Why would I do that? That doesn't make sense. So you give people a sense of direction and you give people a sense of morality. And then most people apparently see the light when that happens. Now, are there still going to be serial offenders? Well, sure. I mean, human beings are human beings, and some people, they're just going to reoffend. And, you know, maybe every now and then there are just some bad apples out there. But the number of bad apples is significantly less than one would originally think. So, you know, I've been convinced that when you look at the evidence and when you look at, you know, the criminal justice systems that are geared towards rehabilitation, they just work better and they're much less likely to commit crimes. People are much less likely to commit crimes in those societies. So no, I don't think that the harsher the punishment, the less likely it is others commit crime. Also because, you know, criminals usually when they're doing some sort of crime, it's not exactly logical. So it's not like they're doing a logical deduction. It's not like they think, oh, I'm going to get caught. They're doing it thinking they're not going to get caught. So it doesn't matter to them what the punishment is because they don't think they're going to get any punishment against them at all. So yeah, I don't think that's true. Are you working on debating Shapiro or others at Politicon? I'm not working on anything involving Politicon because they haven't reached out to me yet. And I don't even know if they've released the date yet that they're having the next Politicon. So, I mean, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But yeah, I'll bring that up. I will bring up, you know, Ben Shapiro because I know all you guys want it. And certainly it's something I'd be interested in doing. You must stop war. Iran are ready. U.S. will lose. Well, it's not even about like losing or winning. It's that the U.S. wants to do regime change in another country. And the reason they want to do it is because we want cheap fucking oil. You know, Cenk made this point the other day and it's obvious, but he said, well, would you look at that? There's how many dictators in the world? Like maybe 100 dictators in the world. And the two that the U.S. happen to care so much about, and ones that we need to topple, happen to be in Venezuela and happen to be in Iran. Well, that's weird. They're sitting on a tremendous amount of oil in both cases. So it's not like, if anybody really believes the fake moralizing of the U.S. government, I mean, that's just embarrassing at this point. I mean, and I'm not blaming you if you're new to politics or whatever, and maybe you don't realize it, but if you've been around politics and you don't see it, oh my goodness, you're just embarrassing. Like, it's so obvious what's happening. Really, the U.S. cares deeply about a fucking, Japanese oil tanker? Oh, please. And you think Iran really did that, knowing what the punishment would be, knowing what the reaction would be? No. Listen, there's a video going around online of some asshole from the State Department explaining, like, hey, sometimes you need a catalyst to start a war. So, hey, we need to bay a pig, you know what I'm saying? And sometimes you got to make a little something happen. Basically, the guy's saying, like, yeah, every now and then we should do a false flag so we could get our desired end result, which is war. And, that's what's happening here. I think that, without a doubt, you have the U.S. government wants to topple the Iranian government, and so they're going to work backwards from their conclusion, and they're going to make stuff up. Pompeo said it. He just said it. There was a video going around on Twitter of him saying, when I worked in the CIA, all we did was lie, cheat, and steal. He said it. I didn't say it. He said it. So, yeah, they want to do it, and they want to do it for geopolitical reasons. We want to do it because we're an empire. We want more power, more control, more access to natural resources. And that's what's going on. And it's fucking devastating. And everybody needs to stand up and fight against it. And of course, I just saw before I came on here, Nancy Pelosi's doing the opposite. She's doing, process hand-wringing. Like, sir, if you do the war, you better come talk to Congress first. But she agrees to all of his premises. Like, oh, yeah, Iran's terrible. Oh, yeah, Iran did it. Oh, yeah, they're the worst. So after they agree to all the premises of the right, then they go, but if you do the war, then you better, talk to us first. What the fuck is that? That's not a robust, counter argument. That's such a sad, childish move of like, go ahead, you do it. And when you do it, we're not really going to fight back against it, but we're going to say you didn't dot your I's and cross your T's properly. Oh, please. Can we create a new brand, Secular Seltzer? Proceeds can go to the channel. Would be more than happy to spearhead the initiative. Love you, Kyle. Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. I never thought about that. And contrary to what everybody thinks, I'm not actually a seltzer sellout. It's just like, a joke type thing. But imagine I actually come out with a line of seltzer. That'd be hilarious. I appreciate your show. Help me out of the right-wing bubble. Thank you. Well, thank you, Dylan. I love hearing that stuff, man. I'm not going to lie. I was a little butthurt when... what's the dude's name? Why am I blanking on his name now? I had it in my head the past, 3 days. The dude who had the New York Times profile making of a YouTube radical written about him. Making of a YouTube radical. Let me figure out his name real quick. Caleb Kane. That's okay. I knew that's what it was. Okay, so I was a little butthurt when Caleb Kane was like, yes, I fell down this right-wing rabbit hole and I became, kind of an extremist and believed in race realism garbage and all this stuff. And then he goes on to say, and the person that got me out of it was Destiny. I was like, God damn it. I mean, I was happy for him, of course, and I love Destiny, so I'm glad that he got out of it by watching Destiny. But I was like, damn, you didn't stumble across a Secular Talk video around the same time and go like, oh, this guy got me out of it too. Because honestly, those are my favorite stories. My favorite stories are like, so I was going down the right wing, rabbit hole, and I was on the Stefan Malek videos, and then I stumbled across a Secular Talk video, and you changed my mind. Those are my favorite because it shows that that's like a material change in the world that makes me feel like what I'm doing matters a lot. Because, and I still remember it. You could ask Lilith. I helped change Lilith's mom's mind. And I remember when she told me, and I was like, yes, because that's what it's all about, man. That's what it's all about. It's about, trying to make the world a better place. And the way to try to make the world a better place is by getting people to, kind of see things in a way that you think is more moral and more ethical and more rational. And that has a reverberating effect. And when more people believe these things, then we fight for these things, and then it's more likely to happen. We're more likely to get to a situation where everybody has healthcare, for example. So I love, those are my favorite stories. Help get me out of the right-wing bubble. And it's kind of depressing that exists in the first place. The fact that people can kind of slide down that rabbit hole and end up, believing like ridiculous things because some asshole with a charismatic personality convinced them. And also what's great is that you always hear, whenever people get out of it, they always also say like, oh, and now I also am much more able to think for myself than I was before. And that's always great to hear too, because it's not just teaching people what to think. It's more about how to think. Like you don't have to agree with me on everything, but you just have to understand and acknowledge and realize that there's an objective way to go about these things, and a way to, look at studies and look at evidence and look at data and, use logic and try to see things through other people's eyes as well. And there's a way to think about these things where you can be confident in your thought process. And that's more important than just believing the right things. And you certainly hear that a lot more when it's people on the left than you would hear from, the people on the right. It's usually this weird kind of pseudo-authoritarian looking up to a charismatic leader. Whereas on the left, it's like, I finally learned how to think, and now I watch like maybe a bunch of the lefties, but I make up my own mind type situation. And that's always good. How bad is it that Elizabeth Warren is rising? I'm going to get this question a bunch. I'm not too worried. That's what I would say. I still think Bernie's the better candidate. I still think he's running the better campaign. But I also think that even if the Elizabeth Warren rising in the polls thing is real, that's not a reason to be too sad. It's a reason to celebrate, because if the last two standing are Bernie and Elizabeth Warren, then that's good. That's good. That's better than the last two standing being Bernie and Biden, or the last two standing being Bernie and Kamala. So you shouldn't be too upset about that. If it gets to a point where she really crosses Bernie in the polls and she keeps rising and he keeps going down, then we'll sound the alarm a little bit. But as of right now, I still have confidence that Bernie's campaign is better and Bernie's ideas are better. So I'm not too worried about that at the moment. Have you gone back to the casino from high school with Corin yet? And do you ever think you'd stop the show? If so, what type of reason? No, I'd never stop the show. And have I gone to the casino again with Corin? No. And that casino that we went to in that video on Corin's World, and Corin's going to love that I'm shouting him out right now, but I'll give him a shout out. Go check out his channel, Corin's World. Also, by the way, we just did a Kyle and Corin, and he recorded some behind the scenes stuff for Corin's World. So go check all that stuff out. But anyway, that casino we went to was actually a relatively new casino. It wasn't around when we were in college and when we were in high school. When we were in high school, we went and we played at these underground creepy ass clubs, and we were in way over our head, because later on, like 6 years later, I saw a news report about how the dude who ran the club had his hand cut off in front of that club. So it turns out the dudes who me and Corin thought were like fake mafia dudes, no, they were like real mafia dudes. And we were little high schoolers playing cards at this like underground mafia club, which is kind of hilarious, and also incredibly scary. But I haven't been back there in a while. The casino we went to in Kyle and Corin, I haven't been back to, and I definitely haven't been back to that card club. I don't even think it exists anymore. Thoughts on Warren beating Sanders in some polls? Well, I'm not sure. I haven't seen a poll where she's beating him. I've seen polls where she's surging. I haven't seen polls where she's beating him. Hey, I never knew you'd go live. I do political videos. Okay. DC Daycare said that. Every now and then we go live. We do these secular talking smack things. Somebody says Andrew Yang is a libertarian Trojan horse. Yeah, I think what this person is referencing is that video that just came out. Andrew Yang went on Rubin's show. Now that alone, I don't like, to me, even though Rubin is like hilariously stupid, I don't like discount Andrew Yang simply because he went on Dave Rubin's show. However, what he said on the show is concerning, because he basically more or less admitted, the UBI is an opt-in type thing. Well, hold on. You said it's a universal basic income. The word universal means the definition is the opposite of like you have to opt in or opt out. No. Universal means it's just everybody gets it, full stop. And what he said is people can choose between, the social safety net that they're using now or the universal basic income. They'll have the choice. Okay, well, that's weird. What if the amount of money that they're getting from the social safety net is more than what they're getting, what they would get from a UBI? He would say, okay, then you could just keep getting your social safety net, keep using the social safety net as you're using right now. Yeah, but Andrew, the whole idea was the system's kind of fucked up and people are struggling, and maybe that's not enough. So you're running for president on a platform of, if you like your social safety net programs, you can keep them, and that's it. That's literally arguing for the status quo. Like, oh, just keep it as it is. No, I thought we were trying to help people. I thought we were trying to help particularly working people, young people, people who maybe have a disability or something like that. I thought we were trying to help those people. Now you're saying, well, just keep whatever the amount you get from the social safety net is, because $1,000 won't be higher than that. So just keep whatever, say the $1,200, $1,400 a month you get, keep that and that's it. Well, no, don't you want to help people? I thought that was the whole idea, that all these people are struggling. So he kind of admitted, yeah, my UBI is more of a traditional libertarian style UBI in a way, because my whole argument has been, I'm actually in favor of UBI, but I'm in favor of a UBI that's a left-wing UBI, which means the amount of money that they would get for that universal basic income has to be equal to or more than the amount of money that they're getting in benefits. So it's a net increase in money going to, people who aren't doing well financially. That's a left-wing approach to a UBI. What he's kind of admitting is that he has a right-wing Milton Friedman-ish approach to the UBI, which is we could kind of scrap the social safety net programs. And he goes on to say this too. Oh, in the long run, more people will go to the UBI, and then you could slowly scrap the social safety net programs. Is that a good thing? I don't know. I don't think that's necessarily a good thing. The only way I would agree with scrapping the social safety net programs is if the UBI functionally is more as a cash freedom dividend going to them than it would be as a social safety net, as it would be in terms of the social safety net. So he's kind of in favor of a libertarian-ish UBI approach, not a left-wing UBI approach. And that's kind of sad, because he's popularizing this policy, which is a good thing, but his version of it is just not, it's a pretty reactionary version of it. It's not a very lefty version of it. So that's a shame. Love your calmness. It helps people to listen. Love your calmness. Am I calm? I've never heard that before. Nobody has ever called me calm in the history of the show. That's actually pretty interesting. Do you think Warren is the Bernie spoiler? No, I don't. I genuinely don't believe that. Hemp paper can save trees. Would fit well into Green New Deal. Yeah, hemp, I know some states have legalized hemp recently. It's been illegal for a long time, but they've legalized hemp recently, and hopefully the federal government can act on that. Yeah, hemp is a great product, and unfortunately it's still illegal in many places in the U.S., and that's a shame. They shouldn't do that. How should leftists and progressives decide who to vote for when it comes to local judges? I don't know. I really have no idea, because there's really not a good place that, when it comes to national news, there's a lot of places that do a great amalgamation of the stories, and it's oh, here's what's happening. When it comes to local stuff, it's nothing but shit out there. There's nothing good that really compiles all the stuff you should know and need to know, and that's a shame. It's really not. It's not a good thing. So, I don't know. Just do your own research and see if you could find, if they each, independently have websites. You could check them out. If they don't, I guess you could dig through some fucking local news websites, as terrible as they are. Sometimes they send those mailers out, but those mailers are misleading oftentimes. So I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine on that one. Is the social media mob that burns people for admittedly bad stuff, racist and sexist stuff, productive and conducive to the betterment of society? I think it depends. I think that oftentimes what happens is somebody will say some totally fucked up shit, and then when people are like, hey man, that's fucked up, they're like, how could you? How dare you? I have free speech. Yeah, I know you have free speech, and you can say the shit that you said, but I'm here to say, I think that is fucked up, and here's why that's fucked up. Bro, how could you, man? I love free speech. So oftentimes what happens is, many times people on the right use free speech as a mask to try to deflect all criticism when they say stupid shit. And I noticed this most prominently with Ann Coulter one time a while ago. I forgot what the issue was, but she said something really stupid, and then people went after her, and then she's like, I guess you don't believe in free speech. And it's like, that's just such a disingenuous thing. No, they're saying, here's why what you said is really fucked up and wrong. And people were outraged by it. And sometimes, yeah, there are things that are outrageous that happen, so you can be outraged by them. It's not like all outrage is not by definition a bad thing. But now, having said that, no, I don't trust the wisdom of the crowds all the time. Sometimes people get outraged about stuff, and it's like, you're like a little much. Like, it's a little bit of a stretch here to act like this is something that's deserving of this huge backlash. So, in my opinion, it's on a case-by-case basis, you know? I think that we need to call it out when the right tries to use freedom of speech to deflect all criticism that comes at them, because sometimes, no, you deserve criticism, and actually you not accepting some criticism for what you said means you're a fucking snowflake. Like, deal with it. We're telling you this is wrong and this is why, and you're just trying to deflect it all in one fell swoop by being like, bro, I believe in free speech. Yeah, so do I. Now, anyway, here's why you're wrong. This has nothing to do with free speech. So we need to call that out when it happens. But yeah, also, you should kind of keep your outrage powder dry for when it's actually necessary. Like, I think oftentimes too much on social issues, people, build the outrage mobs together when it's like, I don't know, you're really pissed off about these things and this like giant things trend on Twitter. And it's like, I could probably go dig up 1,000 secular talk stories that were like the most outrageous things I've ever seen happen. And there wasn't even a peep about it. And it's like, how are you guys not focused on this shit? Like, obviously you're involved in politics because you're political Twitter. And, every now and then there's these outrage mobs that break out of nowhere. But it's like, okay, did none of you see the story about, like, I don't know, an insurance company forcing this poor kid to switch his insulin to a different kind of insulin because it was cheaper for them to use that insulin, but that insulin didn't work and the kid almost died, and the poor mother's on the fucking phone with the other insurance company trying to force them to do the right thing, and they're like giving her the runaround. And like, I remember covering that story and thinking, how are people not fucking talking about this? This is insane to me that they're not talking about this. Or, the fact that we're still bombing 8 different countries and people act like we're not even doing that. Like, political Twitter, sometimes they don't talk about wars ever. And it's like, you're political Twitter. Do you not understand like what's happening right now? And that we have this fucking crumbling empire with fucking insane militarism and backwards policies and how much death and destruction we're causing. And if people like yawn, like remember when the US helped bomb a fucking hospital in Afghanistan and it was out of the news in like 2 days? It's like, if you ever wanted to assemble an outrage mob, here you go. Use this. Go after the U.S. military. Go after the president. Go after the people who made the call, the military leaders who made the call. Fucking call them out. Shame them. It's every now and then, public shame is useful. But it's just, when are you going to use it? And oftentimes it's I don't agree with, I think the outrage meter misfires oftentimes when it comes to what the outrage mobs are created for. And so, anyway, that's my take on that. What do you think of all these Bernie supporter Tulsi haters? Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little weird. Don't get me wrong. As I've stated a million times, and I'll state a million more, and I've said this directly to, the most prominent Tulsi supporters. Me and Nico House had a long conversation that you could check out on his channel. And I like the guy. And, I like Tulsi. But yeah, I think there are legitimate criticisms of her that one can make. And I don't think it makes sense to act like any and all criticisms of her are smears, because I don't think that's true. I think there are well-meaning people on the left who say, hey, I don't agree with X, Y, and Z, and let me tell you why and what those things are. Now, I think that's fair enough. But having said that, I also do think there are a lot of really terrible, shitty criticisms of Tulsi that are out there, and people going way too far in their criticisms. And I don't think a lot of those criticisms make sense. And, I think that we should largely hold our fire on our ideological allies as much as possible. Again, you can criticize anybody you want, but I would just say keep a sense of scale. You understand what I'm saying? So, like, we all know who the real people are who we cannot stomach. Those people, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, and the list goes on and on. Pete Buttigieg at this point. So, like, we know who the real hardcore centrists are. If you can roughly understand that certain candidates are more or less on your side, then just chill out a little bit. Like, you could still criticize them, but it's not don't act like they're one of the bad guys, if you will. So, when it comes to Tulsi, when it comes to Elizabeth Warren, when it comes to Bernie, as a general rule, I think the supporters for those three, and maybe even a little bit with Yang, we could all constructively criticize each other, but generally you should just chill the fuck out a little bit. Because I can see the independent appeal of each one of those candidates. Like, I can understand why somebody would support Tulsi Gabbard as their leading candidate. I can understand why somebody would support Yang as their leading candidate. I can understand why somebody would support even Elizabeth Warren and Bernie as their leading candidates. So since I can kind of tap into that mindset, I can have sympathy. And I can have a conversation with those people, and I do, and that's why I did it. I had that conversation with Nico, and I've had conversations with other Tulsi supporters. I just think everybody needs to tone it down a little bit and chill a little bit when it comes to these particular camps. I will unveil my pecking order of candidates at some point. I pretty much settled on what my pecking order is. I'm gonna hold off until a future date to unveil my list of candidates and the order it is. Everybody knows who number one is. The real debate is what comes after number one. Number one is Bernie. But yeah, everybody needs to chill. If you love Tulsi, great. Argue for Tulsi. But don't go too hard on Bernie. Don't go too hard on Elizabeth Warren, and vice versa. If you like Bernie, if you like Elizabeth Warren, great. Don't go too hard on Tulsi. Don't go too hard on the good candidates. Again, you could explain your differences, but just relax a little bit. It's not, these aren't bad people. These are all good candidates in their own respect, albeit for different reasons. That's my general take on that. I hope that's clear. I know it sounds a little bit waffly and whatnot, but I don't really know how to word this in the way where everybody can understand it and everybody can get it. So anyway, I hope that's clear. I've been waiting to ask you for a while. What do you think of Bernie's endorsement of a Marxist Norwegian like the Red Party in 2017? I love it. Well, listen, man, I've said this before and I'll say it again. I'm of the belief that we know the way that all these Western democracies work. You're never going to get everything you want implemented because there's an opposition. And so you just don't get all of your policy beliefs implemented, all your policy ideas implemented. So since that's the case, I would support people to my left. I would support candidates who are to my left because, hey, maybe if we have, a hardcore fucking Marxist in power, maybe they actually succeed in getting social democracy implemented. You see what I'm saying? Like, you're never going to get all of what you want implemented. So why not go for the person who is going to fight for the strictest version of the left-wing ideology? And then when that person compromises, the middle ground becomes social democracy. So, yeah, I have no problem with that. It's the same reason why, even though Jeremy Corbyn is in many ways to the left of me, I don't care. I would support him in a heartbeat in the UK. What should Bernie's strategy be? It's a good question, and I don't think I could answer that succinctly enough here, but bottom line is stick to the basics and stick to your bread and butter, stick to the basics, hammer away on the populism. The answer is it's the populism, stupid. You got to let everybody know you're fighting for them. You're fighting for working people. This is about class. We need a rainbow coalition. We need black people. We need white people. We need brown people. We need every shade of person, every background of person to come together and realize who we're really fighting against and who we're really fighting for. And just hammer away on the basics. Medicare-for-All, free college, living wage, end the wars, Green New Deal, legalizing marijuana. Stick to the basics, and then also don't be afraid to do anything in service of those basics. You understand that? So, like, here, I'll give you an example. Bill Kristol tried to call out Bernie and said, like, hashtag never Sanders on Twitter. Bernie responded. And what did Bernie say? Have you apologized to the American people yet for starting the Iraq war? Or he said something like that, or like maybe he may have even said lying us into the Iraq war. Yeah, that's what you do. So, in other words, in service of a basic left-wing goal, ending the wars, what does he do? I don't give a fuck. I'll go to Twitter war against Bill Kristol. Beautiful. That's beautiful. That's the best of both worlds because you're sticking to the basics while also crossing over into modern politics in today's day and age, which is, let's make a story. Let's create a story. And we're creating a story by sniping at some fucking loathsome asshole on Twitter. Can't beat it. Because then what happened? All these fucking articles run in all the mainstream media outlets about how Bernie Sanders just called out Bill Kristol on Twitter. And it's a win-win because now you're getting this round of press. It's positive press, even though mainstream media doesn't realize it's positive press. And you're making people on the Democratic side pick a side. So in other words, you're making people who were, let's say, former Hillary Clinton supporters, they have to read an article and go, okay, I don't like Bernie Sanders, but he's right about this one. And that's what they're going to do. They're going to look at that and go, okay, I don't like Bernie, but yeah, he's right. He should call out Bill Kristol, and the Iraq war was terrible, and he's wrong. Beautiful. It's a win all around. You know, he's sticking to the basics, saying, let's get out of the wars, mixing in a new age philosophy of like squeaky wheel gets the grease. There's no thing as bad press. So let's attack somebody, create headlines, and the headlines force people to take a side. People are all going to take Bernie's side because Bill Kristol's a piece of shit. Just wins all around. That's what he needs to do. Stick to the basics and do anything in service of those basics. I hope that makes sense. Do you think the DNC is going to screw Bernie just as they did in 2016? Well, no, I don't think so. And here's the reason why. I think that Bernie's very likely to trump the DNC. So what I mean by that is, what happened with the RNC? The RNC did not want Trump winning. The Republican establishment did not want him to win. And you know that because they force-fed you everybody before Trump won. So they were like, oh, Jeb Bush, he's the heir apparent. He shit the bed. Ooh, what about Marco Rubio? He shit the bed. Okay, what about John Kasich? Yeah, okay, fine, we'll take John Kasich. He shit the bed. And then eventually they even went to Ted Cruz before Trump. Ooh, Ted Cruz. Maybe he'll play ball with us. Oh, yeah, go with Ted Cruz. He shit the bed. Then finally, Trump was the last one standing. They didn't want him to win, but he won through fucking brute force. He won through power of personality and going everywhere and doing these rallies and just taking over the party. That's what Bernie's been laying the groundwork for since the 2016 election. That's why he's been going everywhere, doing these rallies, fucking marching on picket lines. You know, he knows what he's doing, man. He knows what he's doing. And, yeah. I think that it's very likely he ends up trumping the DNC. And I'm going to love it when it happens. So we'll see. Once the voting starts, we'll get a good sense of whether or not this will actually happen. Now, if it doesn't happen, I'll be the first to come out and say, I don't know if it's going to happen. I think he really has to do well in the first two contests in order for this to really happen. So if Bernie takes down Iowa, look out, baby. Here we go. Here we go. Then we're really having a conversation, and it's going to be beautiful. If he doesn't take down Iowa, it's kind of panic time. Go on Destiny stream again without Hassan this time because you guys circle jerk a lot. Who circle jerks a lot? Me and Haas? I don't know about that, man. So are you just saying me and Destiny need to debate or me and Destiny need to talk? I don't know. Can you talk about why Medicare-for-All is superior to the public option? Also, at this point, is Tulsi or Warren your number two? Well, like I said, I'm not going to answer that question yet, but I will be answering that question in the future. I actually want to unveil my answer to that question on the next Joe Rogan podcast. So the next time I'm on Joe Rogan's show, and I don't have it planned yet, but he said whenever I'm in LA to let him know, and I'll do his show. I want to unveil that on his podcast. And the whole point of me going on his podcast the next time is going to be to talk about the Democratic primary and to talk about all the different candidates and give him my take on all the different candidates. And we'll talk about them and we'll dive into the details of them. And I want to educate his audience a little bit on the options they have for those of them who are registered Democrats. And for those who aren't registered Democrats, okay, they could just listen and hear out, my thought process. So I don't want to answer that question yet. But I can tell you why Medicare-for-All is superior to the public option, because every developed country has one version or another of single-payer healthcare, which is Medicare-for-All. And all of the studies that have been done in every way that you could possibly analyze it. So by every metric, the single-payer systems kick our asses. So they have better health outcomes. It saves money. I mean, you go down the list. It's everything. It's more efficient. It's more effective. There are better outcomes. And ultimately, in my heart of hearts, I'm just an empiricist, man. And that's actually one of the main answers I give for when people ask me, hey, why aren't you further left? I think a lot of people who are like legit Marxists are like upset that I'm not a Marxist. And my answer has always been, it's that I'm an empiricist above all else. And so what that means is, if you want to prove to me that something works, just show me it working. That's it. Just show me it functioning the best of anything. And the reality is that of the countries around the world that exist right now, I don't have to rely on theory to tell you why I think my ideology makes sense. I could literally point to something that exists in the real world. And what I'm talking about is Scandinavia. They kick our ass in every reasonable metric with how society's doing. And they are social democracies. They're thriving social democracies. So, that's the answer I give on that front, is that when it comes to evidence, when it comes to data, when it comes to empiricism, the answer is right in front of us. It's right in front of our eyes. And for healthcare, it's perhaps the most clear. Because not only did you have that World Health Organization study, which admittedly is old now, it was in like 2000 it was done, and we were ranked number 37 in the world with our healthcare system. But then there's the Commonwealth Fund study, which I think they do every 2 years or so. And I think it was 11 of the modern healthcare systems that were studied. Of those, I think we're the only one that's not a single payer system. And we were ranked 11th out of 11. So it's just clear as day. It's like anybody who just take 2 days, read everything you can about healthcare systems around the world, and you'll walk away going, I can't believe I ever thought this was even a question. The only reason anybody thinks it's even a question in the US as to what healthcare system makes sense is a massive, gargantuan, persistent propaganda effort that started with the health insurance companies. That's it. That's the only reason why anybody's still discussing it as if it's still a question. That's the only reason. Because anybody who researches it goes, oh my God, what was I thinking? Of course, it's crystal clear. Single payer. Duh. So that's my answer to that question. I hope it helped. Your favorite news info sites, please. I don't know if I want to really give that away, because I have some secret sauce that goes into my prep for the show. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if I want to tell you all it. All you guys are going to turn into Kyle Kulinski's, and then who the fuck am I? Here, I'll give you some. Honestly, in today's day and age, what I do the most is I see a lot of stuff on Twitter. Like I'll go through my feed. Something will pop up on Twitter that I'll go, ooh, I want to cover this, and then I'll cover it. So that's mostly the process now that I use, but back in the day, that was not the process I used for my show. It was mostly, so I would go to Mediaite and I would look at the stories that they have out there. I'd go to Right Wing Watch and I'd look at the stories that they have, The Hill, Vice News. I used to do International Business Times. I don't really do it anymore. I used to do Huffington Post. I don't really do it anymore. Talking Points Memo. A lot, honestly, I'm a little bit boring. I'm kind of Noam Chomsky-esque in this sense, because I remember I asked him one time what he reads. I emailed him and I was like, what do you read? This was back when I was a college kid, because I was amazed at the wealth of knowledge he had. And his response was, I'm not kidding about this. He basically was like, the Associated Press. I was like, what? He's basically like, yeah, I just read the most boring, banal, regular shit you would expect, like the Associated Press. That's it, just regular news. So yeah, my answer is kind of the same. Newsweek, random shit like that. And again, the process now for the show is just, I see on Twitter, I'll see just any story pop up. It could be on any site that I'm following of the fucking 1,000 sites I follow, news sites. And I will go, okay, I want to cover this story, and then I'll cover this story. So it's hard for me to give an answer to that, because my answer is basically all of the websites you would expect, and then some. I just follow all the news sites you could possibly follow. And then I see all of their stories on my Twitter feed, and then I'll just, get my pick of the litter, basically. Is Candace Owens genuinely this stupid, or is she just saying stupid shit that appeals to conservatives as a money-making scheme? I generally agree with the rule of you don't have to assume malintent, where you could just assume incompetence or stupidity or ignorance. So yeah, when you ask me that question, 90% of the time, I'm going to lean towards, no, the person is not, they don't have malintent. They're not conniving and scheming. It's just more likely that they're genuinely ignorant or stupid. And that's bad. So that's usually going to be my answer. Every now and then I'd say, no, I think they know that what they're doing is just slimy and gross, like Dave Rubin, Rave Dubin, as they call him. Yeah, him, you could impugn his motives all you want. I think it makes sense. But for most of these people, I think it's just they're actually like kind of brainwashed and kind of dumb, and they just kind of repeat their talking points. Respectfully, it puts me off when you say the polls are oversampling older people. The sample sizes are exactly how they should be for a political poll. David Packton did a great video about this. No, I don't agree with that, and here's why. A lot of them say, like, the polls I accused of oversampling older voters, a lot of them flat out said it. Oh, this is based off of 2016 turnout. The idea that Bernie Sanders would generate the same fucking shitty low turnout that Hillary Clinton generated is beyond stupid. It's just incredibly stupid. Any election that Bernie Sanders is going to win, it would be a massive turnout of young people, surpassing even the Obama turnout of younger people. So, no, I respectfully really disagree with you. I really disagree with David. I like David. He's a nice guy, but him and I have many disagreements and many strong disagreements. And this is definitely one of those areas. The idea that it's just like made up by Bernie supporters, like the idea that we're just like whining over nothing. No, we're not whining over nothing. That's an actual serious problem. The idea that you just say, I don't know, let's undersample younger voters and let's go default to the 2016 numbers. Well, I wholeheartedly and sincerely believe the turnout will be nothing like the 2016 turnout numbers. Nothing like them at all. So no, I'm not gonna sit here and go like, oh, the poll's legit, even though I disagree with a fundamental premise of the poll. Greetings from the socialist hellscape of Denmark. Are we ever going to see the the 5,000, I think that's supposed to say, dollar desk that we paid for? We'd love to see some in real life interviews. Yeah. I will show you the desk. I should. I tried to fiddle around with a camera angle where you could see me and the desk properly, but I couldn't get a camera angle like that. And also, I'm a little bit self-conscious of the area under my chin. And in order to get that angle, you'd have to see the area under my chin. And that really, that's really like a self-conscious area of mine. I always felt like, and people have told me like, oh, no, it's not that bad. But I felt like anytime on anybody, not just me, but anytime on anybody, you could see that little area underneath the chin. Hilariously, Trump is also really self-conscious about this area on himself too. That's so sad. I'm comparing myself to Trump. Yeah, it's embarrassing. You don't want to see that like little like pudge underneath your chin where you're like, ugh, is that like a double chin? Bro, you're so young. You already have like a double chin. And I wouldn't really call it a double chin, but I'm definitely self-conscious about it. So whenever that camera angle can get the desk, it's also low enough to get like the under area of my chin, which I think makes me look fucking fat as fuck. So I have the camera angle a little bit propped up over my head at the moment. If Bernie wins the primary, should Nina Turner be his running mate? I wouldn't object to that. I mean, I think it would be great. I think Nina's a fighter. I think she's right on all the issues. I think she's a super hard worker, and she's campaigning for Bernie all over this country. If she's not his running mate, she'll be somewhere in his administration, and that's wonderful because that's a voice we could definitely use fighting for us. Whatever position she wants is the position she should get. That's what I'd say. I'm a huge Nina Turner fan, and I don't know. Let's say she wants to be Treasury Secretary. Okay, go for it. Labor Secretary. Go for it. Whatever she wants, I would say that's what you get because she earned it. Remember me, took advice and contacted JD for 2020 run. No, I don't. And by the way, everybody, his name is Jared Fogle Daycare. That's pretty funny. Just so everybody knows, I'm not part of Justice Democrats anymore. So, oftentimes people will reach out to me and be like, hey, could you reach out to them and blah, 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 blah. And my answer is always no. Because no, that's not, I'm not part of the organization anymore. So for me to reach out to them and tell them anything is like, they'll be like, who do you think you are? Like, you're not part of us anymore. So, and I support all their candidates and I think they're doing a great job, but it's totally different people over there. I don't even know a lot of the people over there now. So It's not even like, oh, we still have some contacts of the people who used to be there. No, they're all in different positions now. So I don't even know anybody over there for me to reach out to them and try to talk to them and try to, I don't know, give them advice or whatever. So I just wanted to clarify that, because a lot of people reach out to me and say to me like, oh, can you reach out and do this and this and this? And the answer is no, I can't do that because I don't really know them. Okay, I just read a question from a troll, and I will not be reading it out loud because they know they're trolling. So anyway, can you summarize your thoughts on Andrew Yang? Yeah, I like him as a person. I disagree with his politics in many ways. So I think he's just significantly more libertarian than me. I like to fancy myself very libertarian on social issues. So, you know, I don't want the government to really be too involved in social issues. I think you should basically be able to do whatever you want as long as you're not hurting anybody else. But Andrew Yang's libertarianism crosses over into economic issues. And, you know, he basically came out and said, his UBI plan is kind of like Milton Friedman's and is not something to supplement the social safety net. In the long run, his UBI is to replace the social safety net and not even necessarily pay out more than what the social safety net is already paying. So that's like a libertarian Trojan horse in a way. So yeah, I don't like that. I like the idea of UBI, but I like a leftist version of UBI. I don't like the libertarian version of UBI. So those are my thoughts. Also, if you can, just check out, I did a segment on Andrew Yang, the very first segment I did on Andrew Yang, where I went through his policy platform and I said where I agree with him and then where I disagree with him. And there are many areas of disagreement. For example, there was one thing he put in his platform, I don't know if it's still there, but it was there, about like regulating speech online or something like that. And I was like, no, hard no on that, dog. Hard no on that. So yeah, I just don't agree with him on everything. I like him as a person. I think he's generally a good candidate. I don't think he's corrupt. I don't think he's part of the establishment. I just think he's an outsider candidate who means well, but who is significantly more libertarian than I am. So, you know, maybe he's a B-tier candidate, in my opinion. Who will Bernie pick for his VP? I hope it's Tulsi. Yeah, I'd be happy with Tulsi. I'd be happy with Elizabeth Warren. I'd be happy with Nina Turner. Yeah, I'd be happy with any of them. So, but I don't know who he's going to pick. I don't have any inside information that other people don't have. If I had to guess, I would say that he would lean more in the direction of Elizabeth Warren, because I think what Bernie's afraid of is he wants to kind of assuage the wing of the Democratic Party that's more likely to dislike him, and that wing of the Democratic Party is obviously the centrists. So in order to assuage them, he would probably pick somebody who has a little bit of crossover appeal. Now, I don't think Bernie is the least of all the political actors in our country. Bernie's like on the bottom of that list. So in other words, when he makes decisions, it is way more about principle than like playing politics when it comes to Bernie. But having said that, he's also a politician. And so he's not going to totally make a decision like that based off of policy. I think there will be some level of analysis that goes into it where they think about how can we assuage his biggest critics. And somebody like Elizabeth Warren, she actually has this weird crossover appeal where like there are many people in the centrist wing of the party who are like, okay, I don't hate her. But then there's also, you know, the left. There's still a significant portion of the left which correctly says, hey, I don't hate her either because, you know, at least on Wall Street issues, she's a star on that stuff. She's shitty on foreign policy, but on Wall Street stuff, hey, she's great. So I think he would lean towards somebody like Elizabeth Warren. Are the claims of Warren taking corporate PAC money true? I have no idea. All I'll say about that is I don't for a second think that on tax policy and on Wall Street policy that one should fear Elizabeth Warren. I honestly think that's all she cares about. I think that she's woefully lacking on foreign policy, and I think she's woefully lacking in a variety of areas. Basically, every issue that is not tax policy and Wall Street policy, there's nothing to her. She's just a standard centrist Democrat. But on the Wall Street issue and on the tax issue, she's a solid lefty. And like she's a very left capitalist. She's as far left as you can go in the context of capitalism because she really wants to heavily regulate a lot of these big businesses, and she really wants to tax the shit out of the rich. So I don't worry. Like if the claim is, oh, she's taking corporate PAC money and therefore she's going to be beholden to Wall Street, There's no way. She hates those fuckers. So I don't believe that. But if it is true, that is concerning. But I haven't heard about that or seen that or looked into that or anything. What are your thoughts on free market anarchism? Free market anarchism, so like anarcho-capitalism? Yeah, I mean, I just think it's silly. It's funny because, again, this is where I steal from Noam Chomsky more. He's pointed this out. So in our political system, we expect that we have some level of a democracy. So, you make decisions that impact your life. You go vote for people who you think most clearly represent your policy ideas. Okay, there's a level of democracy there. When it comes to the business environment, when it comes to the economy, we live in a dictatorship. Now, why do I say that? Well, you go to work and there's a boss, and the boss tells you to do shit, and you have to do it. And so, in other words, his argument is all these businesses are like little tyrannies. The owners are like little tyrants everywhere. And that's a little bit of a light bulb moment when I read that. I was like, ooh, okay, that actually makes sense. So when anarcho-capitalists come along and they're like, oh, the way that we're most free is to just have capitalism in its purest form. It's like, well, no, then you have these little tyrannies because all, the corporations or the companies battle it out, and, you have competition and rugged laissez-faire individualism and capitalism. But like what you're saying is you're not free in the context of when you're working as an economic agent. You're not free in that context because you always have to listen to your boss. And what they're saying is, well, no, your boss is never a form of tyranny. Your boss is never a form of oppression. The only kind of oppression can come from the state. It can never come from the corporation. And I think that's such a fundamental misreading of society that it's almost laughable. It's like really dumb that people don't spot that and don't go like, oh, wait a second. I'm scared of the oppression of the state. I'm not scared at all from the oppression of like the capitalist, the business owner. So those are my thoughts on anarcho-capitalism. I think that's what you were asking. I think when you say free market anarchism, you mean anarcho-capitalism. Yeah, I think, when I was in like high school or some shit, I went through like a short phase of anarcho-capitalism, but not anarcho-capitalism, like libertarianism, but anarcho-capitalism is like the purest form of libertarianism. But, I feel like most people grow out of that. And because part and parcel with that ideology comes a lot of other silly beliefs. Like Ayn Rand had to argue that like selfishness is actually good, bro. And it's like, what? that is the kind of argument that would appeal to like a high school boy. But then once you grow a little bit and you mature, you're like, oh, that was actually really silly. So Nico House exposed that Warren is taking corporate money. I recommend watching the video. Okay. I mean, I'll take a look, but I don't know, man. What I would say to Nico is truth is always a defense. So if it's true, by all means, go right ahead and report it. But also what I said before, I think holds. I think the Bernie people, the Tulsi people, and the Elizabeth Warren people generally need to, even though you should critique each candidate, you should be very specific in your criticism and also generally chill a little bit. Because, let's say Bernie or Tulsi or Elizabeth Warren wins the nomination. I have no problem voting for any of them. And I don't want to create an environment where people think like, oh, you shouldn't vote for one of those candidates because you don't like them. So like, let's say David Pakman came out and said, let's say Tulsi Gabbard won the nomination and David Pakman came out and said, I'm not voting for Tulsi in the general. I would be like, what the fuck is wrong with you? But by the same token, if Nico said like, I'm not voting for Warren if she got the nomination, I'd be like, what the fuck's wrong with you? So I'll take a look at the video. But I just want everybody to chill out a little bit. If you're in one of those three camps, just breathe, just relax. These people aren't just the enemies. Kyle, have you seen comments on your videos being censored? My comment on Jimmy Dore's video disappeared after it got really popular. No, I don't. I don't really go through the comment section. Yeah, I never really go through the comment section, so I've never seen that. Every now and then, I know that there was this big issue. Joe Rogan, people who were on Joe Rogan's video said some things on his videos got censored. Some comments on his videos got censored, and I know for a fact they didn't because he never goes through his comments either. And the idea like Jamie sitting there going through comments is a little silly. So I don't know. Sometimes YouTube tweaks the algorithm and shit and like pushes comments to the bottom for no reason, or I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of that, but I've never noticed that on my channel. I've never heard of anybody complaining about that on my channel. People know of my general hands-off approach to stuff like that. So yeah, I hope that answered your question. Did you read the New York Times article about Navy UFOs? No, I did not see that. Why do you think AOC hasn't endorsed Bernie yet? Do you think she ultimately will? So I don't know. My answer is I don't know if she will endorse him, but my guess is I think she will endorse him. And she has already come out and said, I will make my decision on who I'm going to vote for, and I will announce who my endorsement is basically right before the New York primary. So you're going to have to wait a little bit to figure out who she's really for. What I would say is don't trust any media stories at all. If they say she's for Warren, if they say she's for Bernie, if they say she's for somebody else, don't listen to any of them. Don't listen to any of them. So, because they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. But again, I don't know who she's voting for, but if I had to guess, I would say she probably would vote for Bernie. I'm at work. My boss is a baby boomer and right clicks to copy and paste. Please help. Love you. That's pretty funny. Debate lineup. Friends say Donald J. Trump beats Bernie Sanders. Thoughts? Bro, what? No way in hell. Are you kidding me? See, here's the problem. Here's the problem with that. Trump could get away with all of his flaws against Hillary. Why? Because Hillary's not substantive. She's not substantive. And to the extent that she is substantive, she's wrong on the substance. So what are you going to do, Hillary? What are you going to do? You're going to go out there and defend the merits of NAFTA? Is that what you're going to do? You're going to go out there and defend your Iraq war vote? You're going to go out there and defend neoliberalism and centrism? People are going to tell you to fuck off. So what did she have to do? She had to, debate him when there's no there with her. Now, to be fair, there's no there with him either. But, she came across as the overprepared, snotty kid. And he came across as like the fucking shooting from the hip everyman. And people agreed more with the shooting from the hip everyman. And what he represented was fuck this whole shit. That's what Trump represented in the debates against Hillary. Hillary represented the status quo, the establishment, business as usual, normalcy, and he represented fuck this shit. Okay? Now, against Bernie Sanders, here's why Trump has no chance. Bernie Sanders represents fuck this shit way more than Donald Trump does, okay? And Bernie Sanders represents a true anti-establishment, anti-corruption voice. And Bernie Sanders is deeply, deeply, deeply substantive to the point where Trump could be on stage doing his fucking song and dance and personal attacks and crazy Bernie. And Bernie's going to be like, bitch, let me explain to you why I think everybody needs healthcare in this country. We're the richest country on earth, okay? We have tens of millions of people without health insurance. And I think that what we need is a Medicare-for-All single-payer system. I think everybody should be covered. I think it's an outrage that some people go bankrupt in this country because they don't have health care. Trump cannot hang with him. He cannot hang with his substance. And people will watch and they'll go, that dude is serious and that dude is a clown. Okay? So I think there's no chance in debates between Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. Another poll just came out the other day, and Bernie Sanders is leading Trump by more than anybody else. So listen, I think it's clear as day, and I think your friends are in for quite a surprise. Love you, Kyle. Would you ever run for office? My answer is probably not. Probably not. How long have you been on YouTube? 679,000 subscribers. Wow. I've been on YouTube. I think the channel was created as a hobby in 2008. And I didn't do videos consistently from 2008, but, I did them every now and then when it launched in 2008. So that's over 10 years ago. Holy shit, that's crazy. But again, it was just a hobby back then. I had no subscribers. It was nothing. And then it was, I think, late 2012, early 2013, I think, is when I decided I'm going to do it full time. And yeah, when I did that, that's when it took off. So it's basically been full time since late 2012, early 2013. So let's say 12. So 7 years, basically. I've been doing it like full time. Yeah. So I've been along for for the ride. I've been around a long time. But like I said, from 2008 until 2012, it was just a hobby that I would do every now and then. Ideas good, Coke good, Koch. That's how it's spelled. Lefties bad, Rave Dubin. Yeah, I can't. I was making fun of him with Michael Brooks. I'm sure you guys should check out that video if you haven't seen it. But Dave's not even trying anymore, man. Dave, it's like me, bro. I'm all about these ideas. That's all I care about. I just care about these ideas. All right, I'm all about these ideas. Okay. And then when you like try to get him to specify, like, okay, well, what do you mean? Which ideas are you talking about? He's like, the marketplace of ideas, bro. And it's like, okay, we get it. You want to know who really talks about ideas? Bernie Sanders. Like, seriously, go watch a Bernie Sanders rally right now. Like, open another YouTube tab, type in Bernie Sanders rally, click on any of the videos that come up. All it is just a fucking stream of ideas. And by ideas, I mean policies. Like, okay, let's raise the minimum wage. Okay, let's tax Wall Street. Okay, let's do Medicare-for-All. It's just idea after idea after idea. Like, Bernie doesn't need to say he's all about these ideas because he lives it. He talks it. On a daily basis, he lets everybody know through his actions. Dave has to tell you he's about ideas because he doesn't fucking have any. He doesn't have any. My social justice warriors are bad. Mm-hmm. Wow. Oh, man, how fucking groundbreaking and deep you are. Like, that, you want to talk about stuck on a basic, silly-ass level of analysis. Like, bro, you know what, man? Let me tell you something. These fucking college kids with pink hair who don't want other people to speak, they're really bad. Oh, wow. How long did it take you to figure that one out, fucking Einstein? You think you're some genius or something? That's so basic. No shit. Okay, don't censor people you don't agree with. Wow, that's fucking hard. That was a hard one. Next. Like, done, topic done. I'm done in 15 seconds. Now, let's move on to talk about serious things. Let's move on to talk about how we fix the country. Let's move on to talk about how, I don't know, we make it so 40 million people get healthcare when they don't have healthcare right now. How we stop bombing 10 different countries and having 900 military bases around the world. How we stop the fucking destruction of the environment and climate change. Let's talk about, like, really serious shit. Wages haven't budged since 1978. And you got nothing to say about that shit. So it's so fucking, there's nothing there. There's nothing there. It's a fucking smirk in a suit where he says, I'm all about ideas, bro. And all he's got for you is like shitty libertarian talking points and social justice warriors bad. Wow, Dave, fucking genius, man. Elaborate on Sam Harris criticisms. Big fan of you and him. Ooh. I don't know about that, dog. So I think that Ezra Klein back and forth really illustrated more than anything else how much he's kind of lost it. So Ezra Klein, I mean, Ezra Klein is like a milquetoast centrist. Okay, now I don't agree with Ezra Klein on everything. I'm sure I've critiqued him on my own many times. But Ezra Klein is like so mild-mannered and so polite. And he basically said to Sam Harris, like, hey, man, listen, you're talking to Charles Murray. Okay, fine. You want to talk to Charles Murray? It's all good. But don't, like, pretend like, oh, he's just a politically incorrect, misunderstood guy. No, Charles Murray is a bigot, okay? That's what he is. And he works backwards from his conclusion. And his whole idea is like, oh, the reason that black people do so poorly in society is because of they have lower IQs on average. And he dresses it up and he intellectualizes it and he rationalizes it. But the fundamental conclusion of his book is like, so we shouldn't fucking try to help people anyway because they're not going to make it anyway because they're just genetically predisposed to not making it. They're not going to be successful because they're not that intelligent and they're basically genetically inferior. So, we shouldn't. Why should we have all these like social safety net programs and why should we give people a shot and stuff like that? That's Charles Murray in a nutshell. Okay. Now, so Sam Harris has him on his podcast and he's basically like, I wouldn't say fawning over him, but certainly not adequately pushing back on his ideas because it's not like his ideas, like Sam Harris's approach was like, oh, obviously you're correct on the substance. And why do these like outraged lefties why are they so irrational in dealing with you? And Ezra Klein basically confronted Sam Harris and was like, hey, dude, like, you're really misrepresenting what the left's reaction is. It's not like we actually fundamentally disagree with his premise. Like, we think he's wrong, and we think that there are odious consequences to the thing that he's arguing for. And Sam basically refused to accept the criticism from Ezra Klein as if and he basically accused Ezra Klein of like being a smear merchant. And it's like, fucking Ezra Klein? No, he just disagrees with you. And if you listen to them go back and forth, it's so obvious that Ezra Klein is like, whoa. Hey, bro, listen. I like you. I like your podcast. I listen to it. I'm saying, here's why I think Charles Murray is wrong. And here's why I think the way you handled that conversation with him was a little silly, because you acted like, oh, he's just this politically incorrect guy who's telling the truth and people are triggered by it. And I don't agree with that. And the left doesn't agree with that. And here's why we don't agree with that. And basically, Sam refused to acknowledge it as like a legitimate criticism from a serious person. He just acted like you're just a PC, like, fucking snowflake. And that's, I've sensed that over and over with Sam Harris. Anybody who criticizes him is like, you're politically correct, you're a snowflake, you're not a serious person, you're just unwilling to acknowledge the harsh truths of the world. And it's such a tired tap dance. And ironically, he's actually the one being a little disingenuous, because when your default reaction is, well, everybody who disagrees with me is fucking, some sort of smear merchant. It's like, no, can you just for a second put aside your feelings on the issue and just accept the criticism as if it is coming from a genuine place, and then acknowledge it and deal with it head on? And he doesn't do it. He never does it. So yeah, that's like the most clear recent example when I was like, oh man, what you're doing is kind of embarrassing. And it was so bad that people on like Sam Harris's own Reddit forum were like, that was bad, dude. Like, what are you doing? You look like ridiculous with what you're doing here. Like, Ezra Klein is coming from a good place. He disagrees with you. He's trying to explain it. And you're the one who's kind of being irrational. So yeah, that's one of many things that I could talk about here. He's also very much of the, centrist Democratic philosophy, and he doesn't agree with and dislikes the Bernie Sanders philosophy. I just think his analysis is not really solid. So I hope that elaboration helped a little bit. There's a lot more I could say, but I'll cut it off there. Please call for banner and sign postings about Julian and Chelsea in local cities. We are heavily censored online and must be the media in our streets. Action for Assange on Twitter for details. Thanks. Okay, so that's action _for the number 4 Assange. I guess what they want is to put up, stuff about Chelsea Manning and Julian Assange, because they're definitely being persecuted at the moment. The good news is that the reaction when Assange was arrested, you actually saw people who maybe we weren't expecting to say, whoa, this goes too far. They actually did come out and say it. So that made me happy to see that people who I was expecting to be on the wrong side of it were like, hey, listen, man, I don't like Assange, but whoa, this goes way too far. So yeah, we hope that Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning get justice. What's happening to them is disgusting. And remember, it's happening because they exposed powerful people. That's what happens when you expose the powerful. They come after you, come hell or high water. My autistic side can't help but group YouTube progressives together. I think you and Michael Brooks make a great team, and I'd like to see more collabs, some with Pac-Man and Destiny. Yeah, I mean, I've done a bunch of them recently. It was, I spoke to Michael Brooks, spoke to Destiny and Hassan relatively recently. I've spoken to Pac-Man a bunch of times. We haven't done it necessarily recently, though. What are your views on animal rights activism and wildlife conservation? Yeah, I mean, I'm in favor of, regulation that makes the environment sustainable. I think that particularly what's happened to the oceans is grotesque. I've seen those videos of like the garbage patch the size of Texas in the ocean, and it's like, what are we doing? This is insane. As far as the animal rights stuff, I have to say, and I get shit for this, but whatever, it is what it is. I just don't know. I don't know, and here's why. I'm a meat eater. I'm a meat eater. I like cheeseburgers. I do. In many ways, I'm just kind of like a regular dude, and one of those ways is my diet, and I eat like shit, and I eat meat. Now, where I disagree with a lot of people is I see the morality in veganism. Like, I can see it. Like, the idea of, hey, let's just try our best to not hurt any conscious living thing. I see why people say, hey, that's what's moral. That's what's ethical. That's what you should do. I can see that. And I think there's something that's like morally pure about that. So I respect the shit out of it. So in many ways, I give vegans credit. But me personally, I've never been a vegan. I've never even really been a vegetarian much at all. I mean, there are stretches where I've gone with not eating a lot of meat, but I've always had at least some meat, at least chicken. Like there are times I've gone no steak, stuff like that, but some chicken every now and then. But yeah, I'm so immensely culturally brainwashed that it's like, for me to even begin that process of just eating no meat, eating no products that involve animals, I wouldn't even know where to start, bro. I wouldn't even know where to start. I was actually talking to Greenwald about this a while ago because he's a vegan, and he's great because he's, number one, he's very convincing. Number two, he doesn't push it on you. He lets you come to it yourself, which actually doesn't sound a lot like Glenn Greenwald. Glenn Greenwald is a very persuasive, direct guy. But when it comes to this stuff, he's very much like, because it took him a while to get there, so I think he's understanding of others. And so he doesn't want to force it on you. He wants you to see it yourself so that you can make that jump. But he basically said, like, in order to be, like, you have to love beans to be a vegan because that's like all you eat. And, you know, I do like them, but I could get tired of them quick, dog. I can get tired of those quick. So I don't know. And I've always been, like, the cultural issues there always weirded me out. So what I mean by that is, like, we judge the shit out of people who eat dogs, like in China or whatever. Like, oh my God, there's this festival where they eat dogs. And it's like, we have fucking bacon here. You don't think a pig is as smart as a dog? It is. It is, for sure. So, like, the idea that we're like outraged, like, how could you? You're eating a dog? It's like, well, we eat pigs here. We eat pigs. You know, cows. There's a video online of cows of, like, they've been in a dark fucking room locked up for a while, and then they're let out and they're jumping all over the place and they're happy. Like, that's one of those things where you go, oh shit, I'm not eating this dumb fucking lumbering thing. I'm eating this intelligent being. And it's fucked up. But at the same time, it's so built into the system that you find it like impossible to break free from it, or at least I do, especially because my laziness level is off the fucking charts. But hey, you know what? Now they're coming up with the burgers that are not, there's no meat in them. Well, there's always veggie burgers, but, like, you know what I mean? The new ones. And it's like, if I could have that and it totally replaces the taste of meat, like meat from an animal, I'm in, dude. I'm all in, dude. 100% I'm in. And I'll stick to that as long as it, adequately, matches that taste. So I guess I could see myself becoming at some point a vegan or a vegetarian if I find the right foods that really sufficiently replace meat, because I've just been a meat eater my whole life. But yeah, I will also say this though, for sure, I'm on the page of there should be laws that mandate fair treatment of animals leading up to people eating them. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I actually think that's important, because when you, like, shove fucking cows or pigs or chickens in these tight ass cages and they live these miserable lives, there is something that's immoral about that. Whereas if they have at least a fucking free, fair, kind life where they have grazing room and shit. Like, I always try when I go to the store, I get the cage-free eggs. Who knows if they're really cage-free? I have no idea if there's regulations around that shit. But I get that because I think I would prefer that, like, all chickens be fucking cage-free in this country. I think we should have rules around the ethical treatment of animals while they're in custody type thing. In custody, that's a weird way of putting it. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, if you can't tell, this is an issue that I'm a little bit all over the place on. But yeah, those are my thoughts on it. Let's see. My brother is a tradesman union worker and despises Bernie Sanders because he sees him as a guy who wants to rob the taxpayer dry. Well, yeah, but, I mean, that's not true. That's the thing, is, like, when you look at the tax proposals that come from people like Bernie Sanders, and I wish he would mention this more, but he doesn't. But he's not talking about raising taxes for regular people. He's talking about raising taxes on the rich and raising taxes on corporations. And as you do that, you take those funds and you actually give more services to working people. So effectively, your taxes stay the same or they go down if you're a working person, and then you also get more services. So it's a win-win. Ultimately, and this goes back to the healthcare point too. Like, okay, Medicare-for-All. If I tell you that, you know, instead of paying $500 a month for your private premium, okay, private insurance premium, I'm going to say, take that $500, put it in your pocket, and now give me $150. And the $150 goes to the government as a tax increase. You know what? You just saved a bunch of money, didn't you? You just saved a bunch of money. You just saved hundreds of dollars. And that's what Bernie's talking about. So it's easy for the right to smear that and for corporate Democrats to smear that and say, Bernie wants to raise your taxes, bro, $150 a month. But okay, but what's the other part of the equation? He also wants to take the $500 that you pay as a health insurance premium, private health insurance premium, put that back in your pocket so you net save money. See, this is the stuff, this is like the propaganda that's been pushed into everybody's mind about the philosophy that Bernie Sanders has, leads regular people to go, oh, Bernie just wants to rob me dry. When it's like, well, no, you've been fucking spoon-fed nothing but propagandistic bullshit for the past 4 years, so that's why you think that, but it's utter nonsense. So, in other words, as Malcolm X said, the media has you loving your oppressor and hating the oppressed. That's basically what's happening in that situation. Do you think the establishment will rig the next election? Well, no, like I said before, I think Bernie Sanders can trump the DNC, trump the Democratic primary. You should have a respectful debate with Pacman on points of disagreement, Israel, Ilhan Omar, even Russiagate. Well, no, Russiagate is done. Russiagate is over. Russiagate is gone, and I'm happy it's gone. I'm so fucking sick of that topic. It annoyed me to no end. The entire time I had to talk about it, I was thinking, why the fuck am I talking about this? And it was, I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it in every way. I'm even sick of the people who I agree with who won't shut the fuck up about it. Like, shut the fuck up. We're done here. We're done here. Let's move on. So I don't care. It's over. It's done. If you can't tell, nothing happened. Like I said. So I'm right. But side note, I don't want to talk about it anymore. I'm done with it. I think it's stupid. I'm over it. It's such a distraction from the things we should be talking about that would help improve people's lives. Ilhan Omar, yeah, I just totally disagree with him. The idea that she's anti-Semitic, I think, is laughable. I think it's sheer propaganda. I don't want to really debate Israel with him. No, I know the internet thrives on controversy, but I don't want to debate random stuff with Pacman. Him and I have disagreements. We have agreements. He even said it in his talk with Joe Rogan. He was like, hey, listen, man, there's 10 or 20% of things that I might disagree with when it comes to, you know, a Tulsi supporter, for example. But because of the internet, all we're going to do is talk about that 10 or 20% where we disagree. And that's not healthy, because then we're not talking about the 80 or 90% where we agree. And so now we think we're fucking enemies, and we're not enemies. So yeah, I don't know. I wish there was just like, you know, everybody in progressive politics world would fucking chill, man. Everybody just chill. Why are we sniping at each other? Just chill. And by the way, that's not me saying let's pretend like we have no disagreements. No, we have disagreements. We do. And they are what they are, and they're going to be what they are, okay? But they're bigger fish to fry out there, man. We have common enemies. We have common goals. So, you know, I think I'm more at that point now. I want to work towards actually winning shit. And I don't want to tear each other down to the point of irrelevance where we're actually doing harm. When are you coming to the UK? Can I put you up? I think that person said. I don't know when I'm coming to the UK. At some point I will come to the UK. But the reason I will be coming to the UK is because I very much have to do the golf tour. Okay, so everybody knows who listens to the show. I'm a golf fanatic, and you know the UK has some of the oldest and best courses in the world, and you know they're on the bucket list. Like, what are you gonna do? You gonna live and die and not play St. Andrews, the home of golf? You have to do it. If I die without playing St. Andrews, I fucked up. I fucked up. So yeah, I'm gonna have to do it at some point, but it would be to do the whole tour of the the British Open rotation of courses. And I also have a buddy who lives there, one of my best friends from like high school, and we're still in contact all the time, and he lives there. So at some point I'm gonna have to visit him, but I don't have anything immediately planned. You should check out Non-Compete and maybe have him on. Okay, I really have no idea who that is. Do you know about the Rome Statute and its relationship to the ICC? If you know both, do you support the United States ratifying it? I don't know about the Rome Statute, but I am a fan of the International Criminal Court. And unfortunately, the U.S. just ignores the shit out of it. Whenever the International Criminal Court is like, okay, U.S., you did something wrong, we're like, ha ha, bitch. It's like that fucking meme I saw. Have you guys seen that? It's the black dude in the car, and he's like, that's our reaction when the International Criminal Court says, hey, you guys fucked up. We're like, okay, bitch. It reminds me of the Chappelle Show skit when he's Black Bush. He's pretending to be Black George Bush. And he's like, okay, UN, go ahead and sanction me with your army. Oh, that's right. You don't have an army. So how about you shut the fuck up? That's basically our real reaction. Why 2 lines cost £5, but 1 times 2 lines cost £4? I don't know what that means, man. Retro pirate truth seeker. I don't know what that means. Michael Brooks said he wants to aim towards open borders. That really bothers me about voting left. Social democracies need strong borders. Do you agree? I agree. So I disagree with Michael Brooks that an ultimate long-term goal is open borders. Now, the reason I disagree with him on that is simply for organization's sake. So I accept the nation state, not because I think they're like inherently virtuous or anything, but I just think that in order to organize systems and governments and have functioning societies and civilizations, you need some degree of order. You need some degree of organization. And I think that the nation state is the least bad option in making that function. So I disagree with him on that ultimate goal. However, having said that, I don't agree with you when you say social democracies need strong borders. No, I think we need a border, but I polled this one time on my Twitter and I asked my audience, hey, what do you guys want? Open borders, closed borders, borders with liberal humanitarian regulations, borders with strict regulations. Those were basically the 4 options. And the answer that overwhelmingly won was like, I want borders with humanitarian liberal regulations. So in other words, you can have a border, you can have rules, but also let's understand that human beings are human beings. And most of the time when somebody's trying to come in, it's like, there's usually a compelling backstory. That's not like they're just evil and trying to get here to commit crime or something. No, they're escaping some sort of poverty or some sort of extreme violence, and they think they can create a better life here and contribute to society and raise their own family. So it's like, it's not like nefarious by default. Like, you don't need this fear, this xenophobia or bigotry of like, oh, what if people come in? Because there's no us versus them. There's no like, they're going to take what I have. No, that's a fundamental misreading of the way the country works. It's really, we're all in the same boat. A white family living in the Rust Belt that's struggling is in the same boat as the poor brown immigrant that just came in the country. And the real people who are screwing us all over are the moneyed interests or the elite or the wealthy, the people who rig the rules in their favor and screw everybody and rob the taxpayer and all that stuff. So they're not your enemy. They have no money and no power. They are not your enemy. They're your ally. So I think that I believe in social democracy and I believe in having borders, but I would have those borders with open-minded, liberal, tolerant, humanitarian rules and regulations where we're a lot more understanding of the plight of various people, refugees and whatnot. So I would disagree with him in that I don't ever believe like open borders or no borders is possible. I just think for organization's sake, you need to have some degree of borders and organization in that respect. But I don't agree with you that you need strong borders. I think that there's like a right-wing connotation to strong borders and like, take no nonsense and fucking like kick out poor, children escaping war. No, I think that that's too far in the other direction. You need to have rules and regulations in place to be tolerant and open-minded and humanitarian while still having borders. So that's my take on that. Eli said, keep it up. Hey, thanks, man. Appreciate it. I love animals, but veganism is dumb. End male genital mutilation. I wouldn't say veganism is dumb. I just think it sounds like you might have similar gut feelings that I do. That like you feel like they're doing something right, but you can't live up to it, and so you're just like, it's dumb. That's the sense I get. And you said end male genital mutilation. I agree with you on that. I think there's a lot of mental gymnastics that goes on to try to act like, cutting off the tips of baby penises is rational. But no, seriously, stop and think about what you're doing. It's like, oh, well, you reduce the STD rate. And you could reduce the STD rate completely if you just totally chop off somebody's dick and balls. Does that mean you should do it? No, that doesn't mean you should do it. It's like, oh, you won't get an STD if you just fucking totally chop off your dick. Okay, well, you can fuck right off because I want to keep my dick. How about that? Why super chat cheaper in the US at $1 when $2 in the UK? I don't know. That is weird. I have no idea. Kyle, the British news Sky News did a video called "The Horrors of Idlib," where they're calling HTS the Syrian Al Qaeda rebel forces. Please check out that video when you get a chance. What the fuck is going on? Yeah, they're not stopping, are they? And that's it. By the way, that's one of the first things I thought about when it came to YouTube's new rules. One of their rules is like, you can't question, or you can't, like, traumatic events where a lot of people got hurt. I think they had Sandy Hook in mind. Like, they were basically trying to create a rule like, okay, you can't cast doubt on a situation like Sandy Hook because what happens with the parents, what happens with the fallout from it. But it was worded in a way where it could easily be used on something like Syria, where they could easily just be like, oh, are you questioning what we've been told by the Pentagon about Syria? Well, how dare you? And like, that's grounds for demonetization or even grounds for getting your channel pulled. And it's like, there's been this backlash, and now we've gone we've swung the pendulum in the extreme other direction, where it's like, okay, you can't curse, you can't fucking talk about anything that's even slightly controversial. They literally said anything that's even borderline you can't talk about. And it's like, well, then there's no fucking, YouTube isn't YouTube anymore. The YouTube's not YouTube if that's the case. You're trying to make YouTube like fucking cable TV, and people come here to escape shit like that. The whole point is that this is something else, that this is something different. Did you hear about the new candidates Justice Democrats endorsed for 2020? Why, yes, I did. He actually is in the district around where I am. It's not technically my district, but it's very close to where I am. Let me pull this up. I want to give him a shout out. Go to this Twitter page. Let's scroll down. Okay, where you at? Jamal Bowman. Bowman or Bowman? Sorry, Jamal, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Is it Jamal or Jamal? Jamaal. If you can't tell, this is the first time I'm saying his name. He right now he's a principal at a middle school, and it's ranked first in New York City for improved test score average. And he cut suspensions by 2/3. And he is running as a Justice Democrat to unseat a corporate Democrat in New York's, I think, 16th district. And that encapsulates where I grew up, by the way. That district includes New Rochelle, New York, which is where I grew up. So if you're in that area, this is who you vote for, because he's up against a corporate Democrat. And of course, we wish him the best. So good stuff. I love that Justice Democrats is still doing their thing and working hard. Let's scroll down here. Imam Tawhidi recently went on Tawhidi, I don't know how to say his name, the Candace Owens show, and said some crazy stuff. The left is more dangerous than ISIS. Shake my head. This guy didn't even graduate from his Islamic education. Yeah, so that is hilarious, by the way. The dude is like a fucking Sacha Baron Cohen character. I don't know if you guys have heard of him. His name is Imam. This guy spelled it. I don't know if he spelled it right. Tawhidi. Let me type that in. This guy, man. Imam Tao. Yeah, so he spelled it right. So it's Imam Tawhidi. Tawhidi. He went on Candace Owens show, and he was saying like, "Oh, I'm so happy that you're still alive and you're still safe." And then he says, "Because the left is more dangerous than ISIS." I mean, come on, bro. Like, I get it. You know, you're playing a role. You're a propagandist, and your whole thing is like, I'm gonna be the Muslim guy that tells like anti-Muslim people what they want to hear and tells conservatives what they want to hear. Like, I get it. You're playing a role, but you got to reel it in a little bit, dog. You got to make it like somewhat believable. You couldn't do it. You couldn't make it believable. That was so funny. So everybody check that out. Go check out Candace Imam Tahiti on Candace Owens show. It's absolutely hilarious. You think the establishment Dems are propping up Warren because they see Biden's weaknesses? Are you a fan of Sam Cedar? So I don't really watch a lot of Sam Cedar. I tend to, what I have seen of his stuff, I like it when he goes after Republicans. And I like that he's a fan of Bernie Sanders. So I like that stuff. I'm actually friends with Jimmy Dore, so I didn't like it very much when he was going after Jimmy Dore on a regular basis. So, you know, at a personal level, that wasn't I didn't think that was cool, but that's because I'm biased and I'm a friend of Jimmy Dore, and I think he's a really nice guy and a really good guy, and he means well. And any criticisms of Jimmy, you know, you could say to him, and you don't have to like there's I don't think it makes sense to try to dunk on Jimmy Dore like one would dunk on Rave Dubin. Rave Dubin is an odious actor and he's a fraud. Jimmy Dore is a genuine guy who believes every word of what he says. So I think that maybe the differences could have been ironed out in a better way. But I do like it when Cedar dunks on Republicans, and I do like it that he's a fan of Bernie, and I do like it. I was on a panel with him at Politicon, and you know, he was nice to me in person for sure. He seems like a decent guy. So I don't know. I just don't watch enough of his stuff to give a more hardcore answer to that. But I am friends with Jimmy, and I don't know. I would hope that they would kind of just chill out a little bit. Do I think establishment Democrats are propping up Warren because they see Biden's weaknesses? No, I don't think. I think Warren is like number 5 on the list of the. Not even, probably number 10 on the list of the people the establishment Democrats want. I think they would rather have Biden. I think they would rather have Kamala. I think they'd rather have Buttigieg. I think they'd rather have Beto. I think they'd rather have fucking Gillibrand. I think that on the list of candidates, it's like she's like just a little bit better than Bernie in their mind. So, no, I don't think they're propping her up. I think that she's actually surging in the polls because she's just releasing a lot of policies and people are warming up to her. So, how worried are you that Warren will split the progressive vote and hand the election to Biden? I'm not worried about that, guys. I'm not worried about that. I mean, think about it. Just think about it logically for a second. Who do we have when it comes to Biden? Who do we have? We have Biden. We have Beto. We have Buttigieg. We have Kamala. We have like, what, 12 fucking centrists running? More than that? And then we're afraid that there's 3 lefties running. You know, you have Tulsi, you have Bernie, you have Warren. And yes, I know you have to jump down my throat. Yes, there are differences between all 3 of them. I got it. Okay. But I'm saying just generally speaking. So 3 on one side, and then on the other side, you have like 12 or like 20. If anything, they need to be worried about vote splitting more, I think, when push comes to shove. You and Corin inspired me and my sister to get stoned and do your guys' fast food tour thingy. I love that. Miguel, that's what's up, man. Corin's going to love that. You and Corin inspired me and my sister to get stoned and do your fast food tour thingy. Yeah, everybody try that out. Actually, no, don't do that because fuck the fast food places. But I'm happy Miguel did it, but nobody else do it. Those fast food places are going to put me in an early grave. So I don't want to do advertisement for them, but the tour was hilarious and it was fun. It seems that 2020 will be Trump versus Biden. Do you agree? No, I don't think so. I think that Biden slipped a lot already. Like he's already down at least 10 points from when he launched. And the more he talks, the more he's going to go down in the polls. He keeps doing it, man. He keeps saying shit that people are like, what the fuck are you saying? He doesn't understand the political age that we're in. And then the only fallback he has is, I was Obama's VP. So every time he like gets cornered and he starts plummeting in the polls, he just tries to remind everybody like, whoa, I'm the guy who's Obama's VP. And that's not enough for people. They're not going to say, oh, okay. They're going to go, end. So he's not going to hold on. He's not going to do it. He's already slipping. He's going to continue to slip. He keeps making an ass of himself. He keeps pissing off the base. And in 2020, there's no way you're going to hold on in that scenario. So, God damn it, I'm thirsty today. So yeah, I think he's gonna. By the time the votes happen, here's my prediction. By the time the votes happen, he will come in third or worse in the first contest in Iowa. That's my prediction, and that's what I mean by he's plummeting the polls. By the time the actual votes happen, he will come in third or worse. Somebody says take a free IQ test live on stream. No thanks, I'm good. That's so funny. My grandpa is a member at Fenway Golf. Let's play. Fuck yeah, man. Hell yeah, let's play. Me, you, and your grandpa. That'll be a lot of fun. Fenway Golf is somewhat close to me, so I would totally be down for that. I played there. I was on the golf team in high school. Okay, go ahead, laugh at me. I don't care. I was on the golf team in high school. No big deal or anything, bro. I was the number one player, so whatever, you know. I'm not saying I was the Tiger Woods of my high school, but like maybe a little bit or something. And we played there when I was in high school, so that was pretty cool. I love you, Kyle. Left is best. Love you too. No, not rainy, sunny like Florida. Yeah, but you're talking about, this is Retro Pirate Truth Seeker said this, and he's been saying this. He's sent in a few of these. No, in the winter it's rainy there, right? I'm saying in the winter. I know right now it's probably sunny there, but in the winter it's fucking rainy as fuck in the UK. Still think Biden will fizzle out soon? Yeah, he's in the middle of doing it. I like your name, by the way, Creamy Goodness. Yeah, he's in the middle of doing it. He's already dropped at least 10 points. Oh, fuck, I got an eyelash in my eye. Oh, no. Panic time. Okay, I think we're good. You said that you're against sanctions on Venezuela because it hurts their people. How can you support BDS when the boycott sanctions would hurt Israeli citizens? I don't think it would. I don't think all sanctions are created equal. The way the sanctions were crafted on Venezuela, those sanctions would hurt regular people. You can craft sanctions in the case of Israel that would not hurt regular people. I'll just give you one example. They did for BDS, for businesses that were existing and centered in the occupied territories, they boycotted them, and they put enough pressure on them that I forget what the exact number was, but I think it was something like 30% of the businesses that were in the occupied territories left the occupied territories because they said, okay, our businesses are not going to do well here. They're not going to succeed here. So if we just put our headquarters somewhere else, we'll be okay. So they made the economic decision to get out of the occupied territories. So basically what you see there is like the best of both worlds. You're using a peaceful, nonviolent approach to apply economic pressure to force their hand to get out of the occupied territories. I don't see any downside to that. I think that that's really the only way you can go about resisting while still having the moral high ground and being ethical and being just. And that's what I support. I support nonviolent resistance. Now, if there were, like, if somebody said, let's cut off all fucking medicine to all of Israel, it's like, well, no, I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. But if we're talking about BDS and we get to use targeted sanctions in a way that creates a peaceful solution, yeah, then I don't see what's wrong with that. So yeah, not all sanctions are created equal. That's a little bit of like a sloppy way of thinking about it. The way the sanctions were crafted against Venezuela, I mean, it's obvious that it's hurting average people. You can craft sanctions in the case of Israel, particularly in the occupied territories, that force their hand where you're not hurting regular people. How can I, as a student on an HBCU, do more to engage and educate my peers politically? How can I continue to educate myself? I don't know, Kyla. That's a good question. I like your name, by the way. I don't know. I mean, I would say, like, you know, talk about the YouTube progressive shows and stuff, but I don't know. I live in a little bit of a bubble, and I don't know how cool it is or how we come across to the rest of the world. So it's hard when you're inside the bubble to get an accurate self-perception. Like, I'm just doing what I do, and I know others who are in this same space are doing what we do, but we don't have a perception of like how cool we are or whatever. So I don't know. You could there are certain chapters like Democratic Socialists of America or Social Democrats or the Green Party or fucking whatever it may be. Like, you could start, a college group along those lines, or you can join one of those kinds of groups and get involved, or you can get involved on campus, or even not on campus, outside of campus with part of Bernie Sanders' campaign if you want. Like, there are ways to get involved where you're really kind of hands-on and directly involved, and it will definitely give you an education into the activism aspect of politics, which in my opinion is the more pure angle of politics. Like, there's a lot of corrupt shit that goes on at the highest levels, and that's kind of obvious. But at the activism level, it's almost like the most pure form of politics because it's trying to get genuine change through genuine democratic means. So I don't know. That's what I would say to that. I hope that helps. How should Tulsi respond or push back if when she gets Assad or Russia-related smears in the debates? What would you do? That's a good question. So if I'm Tulsi Gabbard and they try to smear me when it comes to Assad, I think what I would say is, and it would depend on exactly what the comments are and the heat of the moment and what I think is the best path at that moment, but I would probably say something along the lines of, so was Barack Obama beholden to the Ayatollah of Iran because he wanted to talk to them without preconditions to reach a peace agreement? That's what I would say. Because then what you're saying to them is, your criticism of me is exactly like the Republicans' criticism of Obama when they said, like, how dare you talk to the Iranians without precondition? Like, why are you beholden to the Ayatollah? It's just stupid. It's just really stupid and dumb and silly and ridiculous. So you reframe what they're saying as like, you're being a right-wing buffoon. Oh, really? You're going to say that I'm fucking, I'm an, like, what's her face said from the New York Times, I'm an Assad toady? Really? So is Obama a toady to the Ayatollahs of Iran? No, he was trying to get a peace deal because he doesn't want to go to war with them. Okay? That's what I want with Assad. So yeah, I'll talk to him. I'll talk to him without preconditions. I'll talk to Russia without preconditions. I'll talk to North Korea without preconditions. I'll talk to almost anybody without preconditions. Why? Because I care about peace. In order to get peace, you have to talk. It's not just, let's only talk to our allies. What kind of stupid shit is that? You get nothing accomplished that way. No, you also have to talk to your enemies from time to time. So that's how I would deal with it. And also, you reframe it as, look, the whole point is, I don't want to go to war with Syria. Where do you disagree with that? Please tell everybody. I guess you support war with Syria. Is that what you support? I mean, you're coming after me when all I want is peace. So what do you want? Do you want the opposite of that? You want war? So, you basically reframe it and then go on the attack because they are smears. That's exactly what they are. And if I was her, I wouldn't hesitate to call it that. Call it a smear. Just say, you're smearing me. That's ridiculous. So it's a shame because these things get recycled and pushed out there nonstop, and then she has to deal with it over and over and over and over. But yeah, I mean, it really is low-level nonsense. It's really like anybody who stops and thinks about it for a second can go, okay, you're being ridiculous. Like, really? That's going to be your argument against her? Like, what's your fucking argument? Oh, she's beholden to some sort of dictator. Every single U.S. president bends the knee to the fucking Saudi Arabian government, which is the most repressive, terroristic, theocracy in the world, theocratic dictatorship. Like, what are you talking about? Why aren't you attacking Trump for being beholden to Saudi Arabia right now? Never mind, you're saying somebody who's not president is beholden to somebody who we're not even beholden to. No. The whole reason Tulsi talks to somebody like Assad is because she doesn't want us to go to fucking war with him. That's why. Anybody who we're about to go to war with, I support de-escalating the tensions by any means necessary. So, yes, that's a good thing, not a bad thing. Love the show, Kyle. Been watching for 5 years, and you almost always improve in every aspect. Oh, thank you. That's very sweet of you to say. Quick question. Any predictions or thoughts for the upcoming debates? Yeah, I was going to... I want to save it. I want to save it because one of the things that I'm going to do a segment on the next time there's a show, which is Thursday, is I want to do a segment on the debate lineups because the debate lineups are out. And in some ways they're good and in some ways they're bad. It's honestly not the worst case scenario. That's what I'll leave everybody with right now. It is not the worst case scenario because we thought they were going to basically totally insulate like Joe Biden. And they didn't do that. He's not totally insulated. So we'll talk about the upsides of the debate lineup and we'll talk about the downsides of the debate lineup. But I want to save that for a standalone segment. But yeah, for a very basic prediction, I very much expect Bernie to do well. And actually, you ready for this? This is a little bit out of left field, but I'm going to hit you with it because I think it's true. And I think Andrew Yang is going to do well. I think Andrew Yang is going to surprise a lot of people, and I think he's going to do very well. So, and again, that's me fully admitting and saying I don't agree with. He has a much more libertarian ideology than I do, and so I don't agree with him. I wouldn't vote for him. Okay, but I think he's going to do pretty well in the debates. So that's my prediction. Bernie will do well. Andrew Yang will do well. Those are the two predictions I'll give you as of right now. Do you watch any videos by Mr. Medicare? No, I do not. What's your opinion on Joe Rogan and will he return to his show? Also love your content. I'm glad I'm not the only left-leaning person worried of censorship. Love from Canada. No, there's a lot of us. There's really a lot of us on the left. In fact, I actually kind of dislike it when like there's this default assumption that a lot of people have, like, oh, the left is pro-censorship. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Glenn Greenwald is the one who's leading the charge against all forms of censorship, and he's a prominent lefty. So that's weird to make that argument. I'm leading the charge. I'm a prominent lefty. Fucking Jimmy Dore does the same thing. He's a prominent lefty. There's a lot of us that are kind of leading the charge against censorship. So I just find it weird when like people just assume like, oh, there's a lot of people on the left who support censorship. Certainly no more than there are on the right. I mean, what's his face? That guy Keemstar was saying, it's so funny. He tweeted one day like he was trying to get Destiny deplatformed. And then like a week later, he tweeted some goofy ass shit like, why is it only people on the left who are trying to get people deplatformed? You just did it. You just don't think it counts when you do it. Because when you try to do it, you think it's justified. And that's the thing that people get stuck on, is like people always think they're for free speech until they hear something they really don't agree with. And they're like, well, but come on, this is not free speech. It's like, well, it probably is. Whatever the thing is, it probably is. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are some exceptions, of course, like you can't do direct threats of violence. You can't dox people. You can't do really clear-cut cases of libel or slander or anything like that. But like, it's super rare that something actually violates, crosses some sort of actual line. And people always want to draw that line where they want to draw it. And it's like, well, that thing, you went too far. And it's like, not really. No, not really. So yeah. What's my opinion on Rogan? I like him. I've been on his show twice. He's been really nice in conversation, and I find that he's very easy to talk to, and he's willing. Like, I feel like I could say anything on that show and he'll roll with me. Like he'll roll with the punches. Like I could say anything. If I went on that show and I said the worker should own the means of production, he'd be like, interesting. Please elaborate. So that's the sense I get from him. And I actually think he gets a little bit of a bad rap because he does talk to so many characters on the right that people just kind of assume, like, they just think that in and of itself is a really bad thing. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that there is an argument to be made, and this is a point Pacman has made, this is a point Destiny has made, and others have made, that like, okay, if you're irresponsibly platforming people, that can be a problem. So in other words, if you bring on these odious characters and then you don't push back on them at all, that kind of can become a problem. Yeah, I think that's a fair point. But I also I think we need to distinguish between platforming people, not pushing back responsibly, and platforming people and doing your best, but maybe not being as good at it as you should be. Does that make sense? So like, it would behoove you to be equipped to deal with a lot of the shit like Jordan Peterson says in a podcast, as opposed to just sitting there nodding in agreement and being amazed by him. And maybe Joe, he would probably admit like, yeah, some of the stuff maybe kind of went over my head a little bit, or I couldn't push back. But when Joe feels like he needs to push back, he actually does. Now, we might disagree as to exactly when he should push back. Like, there are probably many opportunities he missed where he should have pushed back and he didn't. But, I mean, there are many instances where the classic example, talking about climate change with Candace Owens. Without even trying, he exposed Candace Owens as being a ridiculous person. The conversation about regulation and building codes with Dave Rubin. Again, without even trying, being friendly, normal Joe Rogan, he really exposed Dave Rubin and kind of opened a lot of people's eyes to this like clownish buffoon that this guy is. So, yeah, that's why I generally give him the benefit of the doubt. even if there's something I disagree with him on, or even if there's some stuff he's doing that I think might be counterproductive, I give him the benefit of the doubt, not only because he's a nice guy, not only because he's been nice to me, but because I think I've seen enough evidence of him pushing back when he does disagree to think like, oh, so maybe if he didn't push back in situations X, Y, and Z is simply because he just wasn't equipped enough to do it. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Because that's my take on him. He's a nice guy. I will return to his show. I just don't know when yet. It's the next time I'm in LA, whenever that will be. Probably the next Politicon, which I don't know when the next Politicon is. What do you think of Joseph Stiglitz's view on free trade? He believes protectionism isn't the answer. The answer is redistributing the benefits. I don't know. That is a much longer conversation where I would probably need him here to bounce ideas off of. I don't know his view, so I don't want to like straw man it and then knock it down. I'd like to hear exactly what his view is and have him respond in real time for me to answer. I will say this though. The way we categorize this discussion, I don't think is adequate at all. And I ran into this when it was me, Hassan, and Destiny having the conversation. There's this weird false dichotomy that's presented where it's like, okay, are you for free trade or are you for protectionism? And that's not, there's a category error there. That doesn't encapsulate all of the positions, and that doesn't accurately describe anybody's view. Like the idea that if you're in favor of protectionism, that, for example, like all tariffs are good. It's like, well, no, that's ridiculous. That's like saying, okay, I'm in favor of regulating the market, therefore we should ban orange soda. What? Why? Well, you said you favored regulation. That's a regulation. So you favor that, right? No, just because I think regulating the marketplace is a good thing doesn't mean that all regulations are good. So just because in some instances protectionism and tariffs make sense and can be a good thing doesn't mean that Trump's tariffs are good when they have led to net job loss, not job increases. So the way we have the conversation is a little too didactic and fucking, there's a false dichotomy there that really pigeonholes people into a black and white view. I don't like that. But having said that, I would say that my views on trade lean more in a protectionist direction than your standard Democrat, your standard centrist Democrat, your establishment Democrat, your neoliberal free trader. I certainly lean a little bit more in the free trade direction than they do. Again, that's not to say all tariffs and all forms of protectionism are good. It's to say that it's a tool of many tools you could use to try to influence the outcome, to try to create a better business environment for working people in America. And I think Bernie really reflects my view on trade. Everything I've seen Bernie say on trade is me nodding in agreement. I think he really has it nailed with how, the bottom line is the trade deals have been crafted for the benefit of the owner class, not been crafted for the benefit of workers. And at the very least, you need to have workers at the table making the decisions to determine what's in these trade deals. It doesn't mean all trade deals are bad, full stop. It just means if we're going to have trade deals and you trade out of necessity, okay, well then what are we going to put in the trade deals? What are the provisions? What kind of worker protections are there? What kind of job guarantees are there? Things of that nature. And right now, working people don't have a seat at the table, and that's terrible. Gotta scroll down. Thoughts on Alabama castration bill? Well, let's learn about it in real time. Alabama castration bill. Let's see. Alabama orders chemical castration of some child molesters. Should sex offenders be chemically castrated? What the fuck? What the fuck? That sounds so silly. Mandating chemical castration for pedophiles. But wait, does that get rid of the urge? Castration doesn't get rid of the urge. Okay. I know of people, okay, I know this sounds crass, but bear with me. It'll make sense, I promise. I know people who have dogs and they castrate them, and then the dogs will still be caught every once in a while, like humping a stuffed animal or humping their legs. So it doesn't get rid of the urge to do those things. So how is that relevant? Like, what are you trying to do? Stop a sex offender? Like, let's say there's a pedophile who's attracted to little boys. That's not going to get rid of the urge that person has. So what's the point? Is there a way to get rid of that urge? I don't think there is, right? if we knew it, then I'm sure there would be people who are pedophiles lining up down the fucking road to get that procedure done because they think they don't want to be that. Like, seriously, does anybody really believe that somebody who has those urges is like, this is wonderful? No, they're probably like, I'm a fucking monster and I don't want to have these urges, but I do. That sounds stupid. It sounds like some like far right Alabama shit. Instead of giving people health care, they're like, can we castrate people? Oh shit. Okay. Yeah, I guess those are my thoughts. It seems extreme. It seems excessive. It seems silly. It seems like something that doesn't even address the actual issue. So yeah, that's my take on that. Do you support or have thoughts on banning factory farms for health, environment, and animal rights reasons, even if you personally eat meat? Yeah, that's kind of what I was alluding to before. At the very least, we need to heavily regulate those kinds of farms where you mandate a certain amount of room for each animal by law. Like, at the very least, you strictly regulate them. But yes, I'm open to the idea of banning them, but I just don't know how can you feed everybody without those giant farms? Probably not. So you need to have those giant farms, or you need to have rules and regulations to make it so that we're not like really just overt, disgusting, over the top monsters. Kyle, come to Rochester and have a garbage plate, bitch. Corn was cool enough to get one. Yeah, Corn has family in Rochester. So, you know, that's why he was in Rochester. I have been to Rochester. I think I was there. That was for Corn's wedding that I was there. Corn and Molly's wedding, I was there. So I've been to Rochester before. Lovely place. But I've never had a garbage plate. I know that's supposed to be, you know, delicious as fuck. How was the sandwich, fam? The sandwich was delicious. Oh, there he is, man. It's Andres. I saw him earlier. It was nice meeting you, man. Yeah, I met this guy at Chicken Joe's in New Rochelle, man. That was great. But I was standing online. Corn and I just spoke about this. We did a podcast. It'll be released tomorrow. But me and Corn were standing online, and somebody asked, "Hey, are you from Secular Talk?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, you know, "I'm Andres. Nice to meet you." Blah blah blah. But he basically said, like, "I recognize you because of your voice." I was a little surprised by that. I was like, that's never happened to me. It's happened where people just recognize by my face, but never by my voice. That was interesting. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed your food too, Andres. It's actually kind of funny because I almost took his food by accident. So I hope you enjoyed your Godfather as well. Respect for getting the Godfather. I got the Bad Boy, which is 3/4 of a pound of chicken nuggets and fries. I got the Bad Boy. That's 3/4 of a pound. He got the Godfather, which is a pound of chicken. So that's what's up, man. And I got a sandwich too. I ate the sandwich. I didn't eat the Bad Boy special yet. Anyway, nice meeting you, man. It was nice meeting you. And thanks for the super chat. How can Bernie improve his polling with older voters? That's a good question. That's a very good question. Okay, my answer is, honestly, I really think the bread and butter issues, like his go-to fundamentals of like, okay, let's have Medicare-for-All, let's have higher taxes on the rich, let's have free college. Maybe if he focused a little more on trade issues, I think older voters that you know, lands with older voters more, but particularly in the Midwest and the Rust Belt. So I think that if he sticks to the bread and butter issues and the fundamentals, and maybe he adds a little bit more on trade stuff, that's his best way to get older voters. But I also think, and this part's going to be controversial, but nonetheless, I'm going to say it. I also think he's going to have to accept a statistical loss among older voters. There, I said it. Because there actually is a trade-off. So in other words, usually the more you gain with older voters, the more you're going to lose younger voters. Because they're kind of there's a little bit of a generational divide. And the generational divide is the older you get, the more conservative you get. And the older you get, the more you've made your peace with the status quo. So Bernie is fundamentally an anti-status quo candidate. And Bernie fundamentally wants to change stuff. And so there's a little bit of just a natural trade-off that no matter what, he's going to lose the older vote. It's just a matter of, can you keep enough of the older voters and with your giant turnout among young voters, you know, win and do really well? And I think the answer to that is yes. But I think that maybe there are certain issues that I think will appeal more to older voters. Like, I don't think if he's going out there talking about legalizing marijuana, that's going to go over well with the older voters. I still think he should talk about that and run on that. But I think there's certain issues like trade issues and certain economic issues, protecting Medicare and Medicaid. If he talks a lot more about, like, we're not going to cut the social safety net by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, we're going to expand the social safety net. If he talks about that, if he talks about no more outsourcing and, we need to fix these trade deals, I think certain issues, certain economic issues, older voters like, even though they might, as a general rule, they're more conservative and they're more in favor of the status quo. So that's my answer. But ultimately, he's going to have to accept a loss there, but just mitigate the damage of how big the loss is. Because the more you gain with older voters, the more you'll lose, generally, younger voters. Take on the Poor People's Campaign Joe Biden speech. I'll take a look at that. And see. We'll see if it makes the show on Thursday. Okay, I just lost my spot. Jesus fucking Christ. I lost my spot and I'm scrolling up to find it again. And it is impossible to find where I left off. Jesus Christ. God damn it. Where are you? Okay, here we are. Rochester, Sandwich. You always ignore veganism in relation to climate change, but preach so much about the environment. What's with that? No, because I think that's a bullshit link. So it's not like, hey, if we all go vegan, the environment will be better. I want to give you the exact number. There's like a absurdly low number of companies that are responsible for like 70% of climate emissions. Corporations, 70% climate emissions. So, okay, here you go. Ready? Just 100 companies are responsible for 71% of global emissions. So, in other words, I fully disagree with and disregard the personal responsibility angle of fighting back against climate change. So this idea of like, oh, if we all just go vegan, then we'll fight back against climate change. That's nonsense. It's not true. So that's why I disagree with that link. I don't think that link is as strong as you think it is. I think in order to fight back against climate change, you need to go after those 71 companies. Full stop. That's what I think. How do you see Brexit and the new prime minister? Would you come to the UK? I just spoke about that before, about the UK. How do I see Brexit and the new prime minister? I don't know. All I know is Theresa May did not get a Brexit deal. Actually typing this in right now. Prime Minister England. Oh shit, he's the leader, Boris Johnson? Boris Johnson is the leader in the race for prime minister. Yikes. Oh my goodness. So yeah, that's not good. He's one of the guys who like kind of sold Brexit, but he sold it on false grounds. I'm one of those, like, the left is actually split on Brexit. It's interesting. Like I follow George Galloway on Twitter, and he's a lefty, and he was very pro Brexit. And then there's other lefties who are anti-Brexit, and it's just very weird to go through all the nuances of the disagreements on that. So it appears like the right is pro-Brexit, or many on the right are pro-Brexit because of, ideas of independence or whatever. And then people on the left are pro-Brexit because they think workers are getting screwed with the current system and the way, trade works and the way the EU is structured. So it looked like it was split on the left. Many on the right were for it, but they haven't gotten a Brexit deal that works. Theresa May stepping down without a Brexit deal. Boris Johnson is one of the guys that originally sold Brexit, but he kind of sold it on false pretenses. So it's just a mess. It just seems like the UK is a mess even more. It just seems like the UK is a mess even more than the US is even right now. So I don't know. I hope Boris Johnson doesn't win, though, because I think he's like Nigel Farage. He's kind of a fraud. So yeah, I don't know. You guys don't seem to be in a very good position right now. Are you a proponent of MMT? That's a good question. Aspects of it I get. Some of it I think is just like kind of a dry factual like explaining of the way things work. But some of it I don't get and I don't understand. And there's some like very prominent progressive economists who I follow, like Matt Brunig, and he's very critical of MMT, and I was actually surprised by that. I kind of thought like the left is generally on board with MMT, but no, there's a lot of like very prominent lefty economist types who are not in favor of MMT, and I don't really know the nuances of the points that he makes, but he's not a fan. But anyway, the parts that I agree with are that, you know, I don't think that deficit fear mongering is basically useless. Like, if you do deficit spending, it's not the end of the world. And as a general rule, when you do deficit spending, that leads to private surpluses. So in other words, public spending equals private surpluses. So in other words, that's going to provide economic stimulus, and it's not a negative thing in and of itself. And the traditional Austrian view of like, well, no, you have to balance the budget because eventually the chickens will come home to roost. That's just not true if you control your own currency. So, and we control our own currency, obviously. So I think that that is just true when the MMT people say it. Basically, MMT, modern monetary theory, is basically like Keynesianism on steroids, is what I would call it. I mean, my disagreements with them, though, is that I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to be deficit neutral. So, like, if we come up with all these, like, awesome new lefty programs, like Medicare-for-All or whatever it might be, I don't see the downside of, like, making cuts in other areas where we should cut anyway. So, like, if we cut 40% of our bloated military budget and then, like, redirect some of those funds into a Medicare-for-All system, that's not a bad thing. But like the MMT people inevitably fire back with like, well, you don't have to cut the 40% from the military industrial complex in order to make the Medicare for all thing work. And it's like, well, that's true, but we should still cut back in certain areas. Like we should still cut back on military spending. We should still cut back on corporate welfare. You know, we should still cut back on pork barrel projects. We should still cut back on quantitative easing for the banks. The list goes on and on. So yeah, I just like, it's cool to have a conversation about cutting back in many areas. And I feel like they're just kind of very resistant to that conversation because they're so stuck on the point that like, you don't have to do that and the budget will be okay. Okay, fair enough. But I still think you should cut back in certain areas. Were you ever religious before becoming atheist? If you were, has religion influenced your opinions on issues? I was raised Catholic. And I don't know if I ever really believed any of it, but I was raised that way. And I never really took it all that seriously, I don't think. And I don't know, at a certain point, I kind of shifted from just being a default Catholic to maybe being like a deist, and then switch from deism to just like an agnosticism, and then kind of went from an agnostic to an atheist in the sense that I just think, I don't know, there's no evidence for a God, so why would I believe in it? And there's a lot of arguments that kind of push me over that edge. And I think the most important one in my mind was that the strongest argument that I thought there was for the existence of a God was like, well, I mean, look, everything looks so fucking intricate around us. Everything is so complex. Like, how is it that my fucking eyeball works? You know, how does my eyeball work? This just happened by chance? Like, that's basically one of the arguments. I was like, yeah, I guess everything seems kind of orderly and structured, even though there's a lot of chaos in the world, but everything is relatively orderly. Like, how does a human body just exist out of nothing? And then you learn, like, well, no, evolution kind of explains that without having to invoke any kind of magical thinking. And also, if we're saying that, oh my God, everything is so complex that it couldn't have come out of nowhere, it couldn't have just existed out of nowhere, well, then that same problem exists for any kind of God you would invoke. It's like, okay, any God that would have made us would have had to be infinitely more intricate and complex. And it's like, we're just passing the buck. It's called the fallacy of passing the buck. It's like, well, I mean, come on. God has to exist because look at how complex things are down here and how intricate and how designed things look. Well, God would have to be that much more designed and that much more intricate and that much more complex in order to make us, because he has the ability to make us. Anything that makes us needs to be a super being. And then, well, the next logical question is, who made God? if we needed to be made by somebody, that's God. Okay. Well, then who made God? Because God needs to be made by somebody because he's really complex too. So is there a super God that made the God? And then is there a super God that made the super God? And it all just became absurd in my mind. So my default kind of position is I don't know what the fuck's going on in the world. I don't know a lot of questions, but I'm man enough to admit that I don't know. And my default position is just kind of like an atheistic position. I mean, I don't like go around demanding people see it my way or agree with me or whatever it might be, but my default setting is like, yeah, I just don't know. And if you told me to say anything, I'd say, well, there's no evidence for any kind of God, certainly no evidence of a theistic God, a God of any particular religion. I think the religions are ridiculous. So that's my default setting. And that's, where I act from and where I am, where I lie, if that makes sense. Great work. Been watching you for years. Do you think Bernie can overcome big names like Biden in a very divided progressive field in the long run? Yeah, I certainly think he could do it. Absolutely. Will he do it? That's yet to be seen. But do I think he can do it? Of course. I think he's the favorite. I do. How was getting ratioed over loot boxes? It wasn't really ratioed. It was a lot of dislikes on a YouTube video. Yeah. But, people explained it to me in a way that made sense. And I was like, oh, okay, I see where you're coming from. I still have a disagreement. So shout out to Leon, who kind of talked to me about it in detail and told me what his take was and why he thought I was wrong. He moved me a little bit. He didn't move me fully. Like, okay, so I agree with him that loot boxes, the way he described it, it's obvious that loot boxes can be predatory. And you'll have these games where you pay for the game, and then in the game, there are these loot boxes. And it's like, well, you already paid for the game, so what the fuck is this shit? So I agree with him that should be banned. What I don't agree with is that like all microtransactions should be banned because there's some games that only fund the game through microtransactions. And I think my example of that was back in the day, like when Angry Birds first came out, I played it and it was free to get it. And then once you got it and you played in it, they would offer you, I don't know if it was upgrades or if it was like new levels or some shit that you would pay like a little bit amount of money for. And I have no problem with that, so my understanding of loot boxes was that they were like that. They were just microtransactions. Now, I'll also add that the bill that I was going after banned all microtransactions in video games. I don't agree with that. I think that goes too far. Now, having said that, he did move me on loot boxes because the way he described them, they are predatory. And so when you have like an obvious predatory move by a company where you already paid for the game and then they're charging you more for no reason, yeah, then I agree that we should ban that. So, hey man, you live and you learn. I got something wrong. And it is what it is. I'm sure I'll get stuff wrong in the future. And I was more than happy to be corrected. I'm happy everybody spoke out. I'm happy Leon spoke to me about it. And I'm happy I adjusted my position. But I was not ratioed. I have been ratioed before, but I wasn't ratioed there. That was just some dislikes on the video and some people in the comments who were like, hey, here's why this is wrong. Okay, let's continue. Do you, Kyle Kulinski, think that the head of state and the head of government should be two different people or the same person, and why? Well, I mean, the head of state and the head of government, I mean, it sounds to me like what are you saying? It's like a queen versus prime minister type thing you're putting out there? Head of state versus head of government? I mean, I don't know. I just don't know what my answer to that question is. I think I like certain aspects of a constitutional republic and representative democracy like we have here in the U.S., but I also like aspects of the parliamentary system. I would get rid of the Senate in the U.S. and just go by the House of Representatives. I would make it so it's just the popular vote that determines the president. I would have a direct democracy law in this country where every time we vote in a presidential election, we get to vote on the 5 biggest issues impacting us. So hypothetically, let's say in 2020, we go to the polls. And not only do we vote for who we want for president, but we also vote, hey, should we legalize marijuana? Should we raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour? Should we get out of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan? And so not only do we vote for a president, we also have a direct say on the 5 most important issues that are impacting the country. And we should have that every time there's a presidential election. So I have a mix of beliefs. But I've never really thought about that. Hey, should the head of state and the head of government be two separate people are the same person. Is there a chance Dems will lose the House even if Trump wins? If Trump wins, then yeah, of course, I think it's possible that the Dems lose the House. But you have to look at the seats that are up for election, because I'm not sure which seats are up for election and what likelihood it is that the Republicans would win it back. So you'd have to look at the specifics. But my gut tells me if Trump wins the election, it's possible that the Republicans win the House back. Whatever happened to ethics being taught in junior high and high school classrooms? I don't know. And I don't think I was taught that. We weren't even taught civics. We were taught, I think, history is the closest we got. And maybe there was one government class, but I really don't remember that. All the political classes I remember taking were in college when I picked it as my major. I don't remember much about politics almost at all in high school, or very little of it. But yeah, civics should be brought back. I think people should know the ins and outs of our government and how it functions and stuff. There's a lot of stuff I'd change about the curriculum. Hey, Kyle, pretty sure somebody asked this, but are you ready for the debates next week? How do you think they'll play out? Yeah, somebody did ask that, and I kind of answered it. What I'll say is my predictions are Bernie will do well and Andrew Yang will do well. Those are my two predictions. Outside of that, I want to save my commentary for a standalone segment that I'm going to do on the debates, because they released the lineups of the debates, and I want to talk about that and what the upsides are and what the downsides are. What do you think about Sam Cedars' take on Yang? I have no idea what Sam Cedars said about Yang. I'm going to guess he's not for Yang. And to the extent that he said that, I agree with him, because I'm not for Andrew Yang either. Although I always add the caveat that I like him as a person. I think he means well. And I don't think he's part of the establishment. I don't think he's corrupt. I just think he genuinely has a more conservative ideology than I do. He's more libertarian than me. Do you agree with the idea that Canada is so socially progressive because it borders only one country and is shielded from problems because of its location? No. I don't think. I always think it's weird when people use arguments like that, because it just kind of seems like an attempt to rationalize why things are the way they are. It's like when you say, hey, should we have universal healthcare here? And people go, we're not a homogenous society, all right? It's like, what the fuck does that have to do with healthcare? It's just a dodge. It's just like, well, their culture is different, bro, so we can't do anything that they do. It's like, well, yeah, we can. We could just do it. I always find that weird. So no, I don't think that is why they're so socially progressive. And also, I mean, let's be clear, they actually accept a lot of refugees. They accept more refugees than the U.S. does. So, yeah, it's obviously a decision that they make. And I mean, some people make that argument about the U.S. Like, oh, is the U.S. in a good place because we're kind of, we have an ocean to our left and an ocean to our right, and Canada above us, Mexico below us, and we're relatively kind of, on our own little area here. Whereas in Europe, they're bordered, everybody's kind of just crammed in a little area. But I don't know. I just don't think that that's really that impactful. I think that we can be more socially leftist, and I think we will be. If people actually had their way, like if the people actually got their way and we got to vote on that stuff directly, yeah, I would... I think we'd already have like legal marijuana, and we would release a lot of nonviolent drug offenders, and we would be more, libertarian on drug issues and abortion issues. I think that there are many factors why we haven't gone down that road. A lot of it is corruption, and a lot of it is the momentum of the system we already have. So yeah, that's what I'd say to that. Have a discussion with Destiny again. Okay. I mean, I've talked to him before. I'm sure I'll talk to him again. Crap, you, Jimmy, and Jordan are the same. So somebody's calling me, Jimmy Dore, and Jordan the same as, I guess, fecal matter. Okay. Thanks, buddy. What do you think about MMT? I touched on that a little bit already. I have agreements with them. I have disagreements with them. I know Stephanie Kelton, who's one of the top MMT people, modern monetary theory people, works with Bernie. So I don't, people don't need to worry about the influence of that on Bernie Sanders. I think he's adopted many of their ideas as well. Is Ted Cruz really worse than Tom Cotton? If so, why? It's a good question. And actually what I would say is, no, you're right. I think Tom Cotton's actually worse. Ted Cruz just gets more publicity. So when I was asked a question, like I was asked earlier, the first one that came to my mind was Ted Cruz. But yeah, Tom Cotton, you're right, is actually probably worse than Ted Cruz, because Tom Cotton wouldn't even sign on to like the symbolic thing that Ted Cruz signed on to of like, let's ban lobbyists. Now, again, that's symbolic. It wouldn't have the effect that it's supposed to have, that we'd want it to have. But at least Ted Cruz is going through the bullshit symbolism stuff to say, I agree with, in principle, with the idea of no lobbyists. But yeah, Tom Cotton is just the worst of the worst. He's the biggest warmonger. He's in favor of torture. He's reliably wrong about everything. Yeah, he's terrible. He's definitely worse than Ted Cruz, I'd say. So yeah, good point. Tom Cotton officially worse than Ted Cruz. Tom Cruise is in the clear. One thing I haven't seen many political commentators talk about is how many times is the government going to get away with cutting corporate taxes, with Reagan cutting it, Bush now Trump. Yeah, I mean, that's a giant issue. And, you know, don't forget that we make up the difference there. The American people make up the difference there. We fill in the blank. We step in, and we're the ones who, in a variety of different ways, have to fill that gap by, we end up paying more taxes. I forget the exact number, but I think it was for people who make $75,000 a year or less. Over 10 years, your taxes are actually raised under Trump's tax bill and the Republican tax bill. That's something, isn't it? Because that goes to a point somebody made earlier about, oh, you know, my stepbrother or whatever it is, you know, a union guy, and he's against Bernie because he wants to raise my taxes. Well, actually, no, the Trump tax bill has that impact over 10 years. It actually raises people's taxes if you make $75,000 a year or less. So, yeah, their whole thing, their whole existence, the whole Republican Party's existence is based on, you know, being a servant to corporate America and the rich. That's their whole reason for existing, is to serve corporate America and the rich. And that's not to say the Democrats are good, because the Democrats also serve corporations and the rich. But the Democrats also have at least some more benign special interests. So, you know, trial lawyers, for example, teachers, unions, like these are more benign special interests, albeit they're still special interests, but they have some say in the sway of, you know, which direction the Democrats go. For the Republicans, it's just like all Wall Street, all the NRA, all the military industrial complex. And again, Wall Street and the military industrial complex have a sway on the Democrats too, but even more so on the Republicans. And then the Republicans have just flat out odious special interests like the NRA working on them. So yeah, their whole point is to serve corporations and to serve Wall Street and to serve the rich. So yeah, they're going to keep cutting corporate taxes. They're going to keep, you know, they're destroyed the estate tax, because this is who their real constituency is. And Noam Chomsky spoke about this in length. He said it, and it was such a great point. He was like, Trump has actually done a masterful job of serving the elites and the wealthy and the owner class, like serving their interests while making a lot of people think, a lot of regular people think like, no, he's fighting those guys. So he's done this brilliant political move of like, oh yeah, I'm serving the little guy, the forgotten man and woman will never be forgotten again. I'm going to make America great again. And as he does nothing but serve the rich, he's convinced these people like, oh yeah, Trump is fighting for me, and anything bad that happens is the fault of the Democrats and the deep state. It's really crazy to see. Should Ro Khanna run for the presidency someday? Why not, man? I'd love that. I mean, I think there would be like deeply racist attacks against him, and I mean that. Like, I'm not the first to jump to those kinds of arguments, but I could definitely see like really racist attacks being made against him. But having said that, he's a great guy. He's right on the policies. He's a fighter. He's smart. So yeah, hell yeah. I'd love that. Thoughts on Preet Bharara, Obama's U.S. attorney from the Southern District of New York. He was involved in looking into the Moreland Commission. He seems to be anti-corruption. Yeah, he was good. He was actually dismissed by Trump because he was looking into a lot of people, I think, from Trump's administration, or maybe even Trump himself. He was doing an investigation into them. And so Trump, even though he had told him, I'm going to keep you on, he let him go. So, yeah. Preet Bharara, even though I disagreed with some of his politics, in terms of how he was doing as a U.S. attorney, he was doing a good job. What are your thoughts on municipal broadband? I love it. I think it's a great idea. Ron Placone is big on that, and he talks about that quite a bit. Somebody said hang the neocons. I hate the neocons, but I don't think I'm for hanging anybody. But definitely get them out of government and definitely lock up the war criminals like Bill Kristol. Why are many YouTubers claiming that Warren, taking corporate money in general, sat out 2016 battle, spirited defensive mansion, voted for military budget, is more progressive than Gabbard? Nonsense. Yeah, I mean, Elizabeth Warren has her downsides. That's for sure. Foreign policy is really bad when it comes to Elizabeth Warren. And so there's much there to criticize. Now, having said that, I do have criticisms of Tulsi. I do. I do. And I said them to Nico House. Still to this day, my biggest one is the comments that she made about the torture report. Where, you know, she says, I hadn't read it at the time. I don't think that makes it better. But, you know, she was saying, oh, that's a tough one. No, it's not. It's not tough at all. We were torturing and we shouldn't have been. So I have problems with Tulsi too. But yeah, the vote for the military budget for Warren was the worst in my opinion. That was wow, that was bad. A bloated military budget. Yeah, that's not good. I think that when you talk about whether it be Warren or Tulsi or even Bernie, we can acknowledge their downsides while also stating that overall they're not our enemies. Okay, so you know, with Bernie, he has blind spots too. Israel, you know, his comments on BDS, he's better than other candidates on Israel, but he still has a blind side on in certain aspects of it. He's very vehemently against BDS. So there's still criticism there. Like there is still criticism there for Bernie, but we also can acknowledge, okay, that's not going to become my focus because he's the man. He's our guy. By the same token, I feel like with Warren and Tulsi, we can criticize them, but let's generally keep our powder dry, because if it came down to any of those three, Warren, Tulsi, or Bernie, I would vote for any of them with a smile on my face. When you talked to Destiny about trade, it seemed like you just repeated your point without it seemed like you just repeated your point without absorbing his. Could you give that a look over and have a one-on-one conversation with him? Love the show, by the way. Well, yeah, I just kept repeating my point because I felt like he wasn't digesting it. That's why I kept repeating my point. So I don't buy the argument that he was making. You know, the idea that like, well, there's unintended consequences and downsides, and like, ooh, all these economists say that like, you know, if you do protectionism, there will be negative consequences associated with it. There's a lot to say about that. First of all, who are the economists that we're talking about? Who are the? Is this like when, you know, the oil industry says like, you know, we looked into it, bro, and climate change needs more study. Okay, well, who the fuck was buttering the bread of the so-called scientists who are saying that? They're like industry-funded scientists. Okay, so is it like the Chamber of Commerce economists who are saying that, you know, hey, protectionism is always bad? And then also, it was just, there's a lack of specific points being made. So like I was saying earlier, it's not like all protectionism is good. I think the tariffs, it depends what kind of tariffs you're doing and what kind of protectionism you're doing. So it's hard to have a broad conversation about like, hey, should we be pro-tariff or pro-protectionism or pro-free trade without saying exactly what kind of regulation we're talking about. And that's kind of where me and Destiny came to an impasse, is that we were just talking about these broad terms like free trade versus protectionism. And it sounds like I'm defending protectionism and it sounds like he's defending free trade. But it's like, well, no, what if I gave you a specific regulation that targeted a specific industry that had this specific outcome of protecting U.S. jobs and keeping them here? Are you against that one? Because something free trade sounds kind of silly, doesn't it? So yeah, I don't know. I have watched it back. I watched it back one time over, and my reaction was actually the opposite. My reaction was like, I thought that I was being really clear, and he was kind of repeating the same point. Because I understood what he was saying. I just thought it was a little weird that such a smart dude was going to like, you know, well, every time I look into this, the economists say that protectionism is bad. Again, what economists exactly are saying this? That's point number one. And point number two, what you mean all tariffs, all forms of protectionism are always bad? Really? So if we didn't do NAFTA, that just would have been bad. If we didn't, if you look at the provisions of TPP that we spoke about at length on that show, like he really disagrees with those provisions being bad. Like the idea of having an international tribunal that can basically override sovereign governments. And of course, they're picked by the corporation, so they're just going to side with the corporations. Like that's a good provision to have. I mean, I don't want to straw man him. He's not here to respond. I think it was actually a fruitful conversation, but I don't agree with your characterization of it that like, I wasn't absorbing his point. I think I pretty clearly understood where he was coming from. Views on Jimmy Dore, David Pakman, Sam Cedar feud. Yeah, I spoke about this before. I've mentioned this in other secular talking smacks. I'm personally friends with Jimmy Dore. So perhaps my perspective on it is skewed because he's my friend and I talk to him every now and then. I'm also friends with David Pakman. I know Sam Cedar, but him and I don't talk on a regular basis. Like I talk to David Pakman maybe once every month. I talk to Jimmy Dore maybe once a week. But yeah, I like David Pakman as a person. I like Jimmy Dore as a person. My politics are more in alignment with Jimmy Dore than they are David Pakman. That's my politics. My strategy, I'm not sure. Jimmy and I are totally in agreement. And in fact, we've had many conversations about strategy and, how you take over the Democratic Party versus can you start a third party and, become viable that way and yada, yada. As a general rule, I just kind of wish that everybody would chill out a little bit and that Sam Cedar, but he's done it. I was going to say that, hey, just relax a little bit, man. You don't have to go after Jimmy. Like they go after him as if he's like a Dave Rubin character. And it's like, no, Dave Rubin is like a fucking grifter fraud. And Jimmy Dore means every word he says. And you might not agree with him and you guys could disagree, but there's no reason to like, go after him with the same kind of intensity that you go after a charlatan and a con man and a fraud like Dave Rubin. So yeah, I mean, those are my general thoughts. I'm friends with Jimmy. I'm friends with David Pakman. Sam Cedar was very nice to me at Politicon and stuff. And I like it when he goes after Republicans. But yeah, I don't know. I would just hope that they would lay off Jimmy a little bit. And again, it's fine to have disagreements. Like they can all, you can disagree with each other and they could argue with each other, but no reason to do dunkathons or anything like that. That's my take on it. I just want everybody to chill out. Why can't we all just hold hands and sing Kumbaya and be friends? New York just passed a law allowing undocumented immigrants to get driver's licenses. I don't like it. It doesn't help legal drivers. Uber drivers, truck drivers, your take? I'm not going to lose sleep over that. Yeah, listen, man. These people are your neighbors. I'm sure they're friends of yours, friends of mine. I don't ask to see people's paperwork when I talk to them. I'm sure I've had conversations with, I've met, I've maybe even worked with people who were undocumented immigrants. I don't think that's like, I think that's a crime that's like equivalent to jaywalking. I don't view it as like this fucking terrible thing, like round them up and deport them immediately or, make their self-deport them by making life so hard for them that, they gotta go. I don't think they're a problem. And I think oftentimes, these people end up helping the economy massively. Now, I would make it so that they're subject to the same regulations that American workers are, so there's no undercutting of American labor, for sure, because I care about working people, but that includes American workers and people who are, undocumented immigrants. Listen, my general rule is if you've been here for an extended period of time, okay, and you're living a productive life, working, whatever the fuck it may be, and you're just trying to make a better life for yourself, I'm not going to fucking deport you. I'm not going to make your life miserable. I just think that's so silly. What misplaced priorities? Like, who gives a fuck? A lot of these people are just nice people. They're good people. They've done really nothing wrong except the equivalent of jaywalking by coming in the country. Who knows? Maybe escaping fucking drug war, violence, and terror. Now, if we have people who come into the country and then they're, whatever, they immediately go into fucking doing crime and they're in a gang or some shit, should they be deported? Sure. If you're an undocumented immigrant and you're a violent criminal, yeah, get the fuck out. Of course, deport. There are some people on the left who are literally like, hashtag end all deportation. Why? If somebody's a violent criminal and they're fucking an undocumented immigrant, Yeah, like, you could deport them. That's totally fine. Like, you want me to stand there and argue for somebody who's a violent criminal and they're an undocumented immigrant? And, like, I'm supposed to what? What am I supposed to do? Argue, like, let's have tax dollars and resources go towards it? Why? Why would I do that? Why? So I'm fine with them being deported. I'm not, like, uber lib on this stuff, but I'm also just not an asshole. I don't care. Oh, wow, an undocumented immigrant can drive a fucking beat up Honda Civic from 1999. Who gives a fuck? I don't care. That doesn't bother me. I am glad I can donate to you now. Would you do more interviews with candidates? Do you agree with Yang in making the Electoral College proportional with RCV instead of abolishing it altogether? We covered a story the other day about how states are making it so that they will vote for so the state will be in favor of whoever won the popular vote. And I like that idea. So it's a way of basically effectively abolishing the Electoral College without actually abolishing the Electoral College. I would support that. In terms of interviewing candidates, I don't know about that because first of all, only certain ones would even agree to it. So there'd only be like 2 maybe who would come on. That's the first point. The second point is, I've discussed this before. I struggle with how to approach these things. So there's part of me that wants to just be a regular person like I am, and I just kind of want to have a conversation with people. That's like a Joe Rogan-ish approach. But then there's the other part of me that's like the Mehdi Hassan type character who's like, I'm going to grill this motherfucker. Now, if I could do both of them. That's possible, okay? But that's weird also. It's a little strange to do both of those things at the same time. But also, I think it's like unfair too, because if I go with like the grill approach, then what if the only 2 candidates who will talk to me are the 2 candidates who I like the most, okay? And then I talk to them, I have them sitting there and I'm talking to them, and I'm giving them really fucking hard questions. And they're thinking like, what the fuck? Kyle likes me. I thought this was going to be like a cool conversation, kind of like a Joe Rogan type conversation. It's like, I don't know, man. I'm too much of a normal person. I'm too much of like I actually care. I'm concerned with how a lot of these characters might view me, how I view them. And I don't know if I'm ready for that. I don't know if I want to do these types of interviews. And honestly, I think you guys would also be a little torn on the way I should approach it. Like a lot of you might think, like, let's say I have a conversation with Bernie. A lot of you would want me to be like a normal conversation type situation, like with what Joe Rogan does, where I'm just talking to Bernie about Medicare-for-All and blah, blah, blah. But if I think more the job of somebody who's interviewing political candidates has to be the opposite. I think the job of somebody interviewing political candidates really is more of like what Mehdi Hassan does, which is like, okay, let me think of actually hard questions that I would ask Bernie Sanders. Let me think of questions that are going to make him uncomfortable and he might not like, and then he might not like me after the interview. Because let's say I grill him on, hey man, you call yourself a democratic socialist. Are you actually a democratic socialist? Do you believe in a post-capitalist philosophy, or do you believe in social democracy like your ideology when you explain it in detail means? And then he'll give his fucking answer that he always gives about, here's what I mean by democratic socialism. And then he describes it, and I'll go, okay, but here's the thing. You didn't describe democratic socialism. You just described social democracy. So is that what you believe or no? And then, I don't know. It'll be mixed reviews. Some people will want me to just be nice to him or whatever. And some people will want me to be tough on him. And I also don't, once you open that door to doing like, oh, I'm going to interview political candidates, then all of a sudden it's a whole new thing. Like it's a whole new thing. It's now that's expected of you. Now you're an interviewer. And now you're expected, this is what you do. You have to interview candidates. And then it's a constant stream of, okay, then this candidate, then that candidate, then that candidate. And I don't know if I'm ready for that. And I don't know if I want that. There are a lot of lefty candidates who, have asked like, oh, could I come on? And it's like, I also don't want this to be a propaganda outlet. Now, I don't mean that as propaganda with a negative connotation. I just mean it as a descriptive propaganda, as in like pushing a point of view. Like, I don't know if I want to sit across from candidates and just like throw softballs at them and let them talk about how, well, obviously we need to fucking, get everybody healthcare and blah, blah, blah. I don't know if that's what I want to do. I don't know if I'm ready for that. I don't know if that's what I want to do. I just don't know. I'm stuck in that permanent position of I don't know how I would approach it, Would I be tough and would I grill people? Would I be kind and just have a conversation, kind of like Joe Rogan? Would I talk to only the candidates I like, in which case I would feel like I want to be kind to them, but I also feel like I have a responsibility to grill them? Once you open that door, okay, now it's presidential candidates, but are we also talking about congressional candidates? Guess what? There's a lot of fucking congressional candidates. Do I want to spend a lot of time just talking to people who are going to say those same things to me over and over about what their beliefs are? And I don't know. I don't think that's what I want to do. So, I mean, that's my take on that. Sorry if that's not the answer everybody was looking for. I will say this. It is much more likely that before anything like that would happen, okay, before there be any conversations with like presidential candidates and shit, it's much more likely I just go old school and do radio style. Like, I'm going to take some calls from regular people, and I'm going to talk to regular people. Like, I'm going to talk to Bob, who works at the factory, and I'm going to talk to Jeff, who's an Uber driver, and I'm going to talk to, Rebecca, who's a teacher. Like, that is a lot more likely. That is an idea I've flirted with many times where I'm like, should I do that? Should I go back to doing that a little bit? Like, because way back in the day with Secular Talk, we used to take calls every now and then. And that's something that now I'm starting to think again, like, that'd be pretty cool. Should I do that again? Should I go back to do maybe taking some calls? That is much more my wheelhouse. That's more what I'm used to. And that's more of an open format where it allows for me to do either one. Like, okay, if I disagree with the person, okay, then let's have a little bit of a debate or whatever. If I don't disagree with the person and I agree with the person, okay, then let's just have a little bit of a conversation. It can change from call to call type thing. So if anything were to happen, first and foremost, it would be that. Because that's a format that I'm much more comfortable with and that I like a lot more, if I'm being honest with you. I think once you open the door to interviewing candidates, that's a hell of a lot more of a responsibility, and it's not necessarily my wheelhouse. Again, I hope that makes sense. Greetings from Luxembourg. With China and India likely surpassing the U.S. economically soon, how would you think the U.S. would react? More militaristic, isolationist, aka Trumpian, or more diplomatic route? Well, it depends on who's in office, but I think the consistent will be more militaristic. So, in other words, our reaction to other economies, like building up and then eventually surpassing us, our reaction is going to be like, okay, but we're still the big boy on the block. And you want to know why? Because we got a military that's like 18 times the size of everybody else. So I think that that's what's going to happen. I think that the U.S. is going to react in a way where we just go back to what we've done since the end of World War II, which is, okay, whatever. Yeah, you got an economy. We got all the guns. Okay, so don't fuck with us. I think that's going to be our reaction, which is not necessarily good. Opinion on One America News Network. They're terrible, and they advertise themselves as to the right of Fox News, which, kind of speaks for itself, and it's terrible. All right, I'm gonna do rapid fire now real quick, okay? Because I really have to pee, and I've been talking for a while, and yeah, I'm getting a little tired here. But I'm just going to do rapid fire and answer the questions quickly, and I'll go through as many as I can before I have to tap out because I'm going to piss myself. So anyway, here we go. Kyle, have you seen The Wire? It's about the effects of the war on drugs and a brilliant depiction of how criminality isn't black and white, like you say. Okay, so Kyle said this, by the way. Kyle Style 987. If that's after me, that's awesome. But anyway, or maybe the guy's name is actually just Kyle. But anyway, I have seen The Wire, and it's a brilliant show, and I highly recommend that everybody goes and sees it. By the same token, you should watch Breaking Bad, you should watch The Wire, you should watch The Sopranos. Like, here's the thing about TV shows. Listen, my default setting is to be a contrarian, okay? So that's my default setting, is like, I'm like, whatever the crowd's doing, bro, I'm doing the opposite. That's my default setting. However, what I learned is that when it comes to TV shows, I'm actually the ultimate elitist snob. So here's what I mean by that. Whatever people are telling you the best TV shows are, they're usually right. So like the hierarchy, like if you go online right now and read a list of like top 100 TV shows of all time, there's like a 90% chance that the way they have it listed, like 1 through 10 are really like 1 through 10, the best shows of all time. Like people have a good sense. Average people have a good sense of what's good in terms of TV shows. And like every list always shows like The Sopranos or The Wire, like near the top of the best TV shows of all time, or Breaking Bad. They're right. Okay. So don't run to your TV to watch like The Wire, like this person's asking, watch the other two I mentioned, Sopranos, Breaking Bad, because they're fucking good, man. Right now I'm watching Ozark too. Ozark's pretty good on Netflix. It's like almost like they're trying to do a Breaking Bad type thing, but they're pulling it off. So anyway, yes, I have seen that. I said I was going to do lightning round, and now I'm fucking taking forever. I'll try to go faster. Did you see the AMA Bernie is doing on Sanders for president? I feel like Bernie is not very technical and too repetitive with his talking points. Yeah, but I don't know. That's kind of the appeal of Bernie, is that he's such a regular guy and he's just fucking like telling you what he thinks. I mean, it's possible that he's not, maybe socially adept enough, but, he's not in his 20s. He's not in his 30s. He's not even in his 40s or his 50s. He's an older dude. So, yeah, maybe he's a little too technical and too repetitive, but that's also kind of what got him to this point, is that he's like very stubborn. So he wouldn't be in this position he was in if he wasn't stubborn. But yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen it. Maybe I'll check it out and I'll see if I agree with that. Somebody says, yo, back to you, Frankie Joseph. And thank you. Do you think Americans are more likely to elect a Scientologist over an atheist? What would a Scientology presidency look like to you? No, I think they're more likely to elect an atheist simply based on the fact that there's way more atheists than there are Scientologists. A Scientologist presidency, I don't know. I would hope it's not like the guy who runs it. Whoever the guy is that runs it, that guy's a fucking crazy person and he's a malignant narcissist. But yeah, I don't know. I would hope that if there's a Scientology presidency, the person would be like a fucking cafeteria Scientologist and just be like, he doesn't really believe in any of the shit, but he was just raising it. You know what I mean? Viewer from the Middle East, you and Jank turned me into a progressive atheist. What the right wing does is bigoted and entrenched me to Islam more. That's interesting. So what you're saying is when people on the right go after Muslims and go after Islam and they talk about, they're not a fan and they don't like you and they think you're all radical and stuff, that made your reaction be like, well, you know what? Fuck you. Fine. If I'm not going to be in the club, then I'm going to be, you're right. I'm going to be with, with my Muslim brothers. So that pushed you in that direction. But then listening to me and Jank turned you into a progressive atheist because you thought like, oh, it's not like all people who aren't Muslim are bad. It's just that the right wingers were treating us like shit. I think that's what you're saying. Cool. I'm happy that I made you a progressive atheist. That makes me really happy to hear that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Again, the conversion stories are my favorite. They're like, oh, you made me, I'm no longer a Republican, or I'm no longer, a religious person, or I'm no longer, like, I love that stuff. I think that's really cool. Was it established where the projectile that hit the ship came from? Organized coup? No, it's not established. The U.S. is trying to say it's Iran. It sounds to me like the owner of the ship thinks it might have been the U.S. Like the Japanese guy who owns the ship, he was like, what the U.S. is saying is not true. It wasn't a mine. So I don't know. I have no idea. But I don't believe what the U.S. is saying, and we know it's not true because the Japanese ship owner was like, what they're saying is not true. So I have no reason to believe the U.S. They've lied about everything to this point in the case of Venezuela, in the case of Iraq, certainly in the case of Iran too. I don't know where it came from, but it's certainly not as it's being described. And either way, by the way, the U.S. is forcing Iranian oil exports to zero. So I did a video like, maybe 3 weeks ago where I was like, listen, they're forcing the oil exports to zero. They're trying to collapse the economy. And if Iran responds, it is 100% defensive in nature. So they're going to try, the media is going to pretend like this is offensive in nature, and they're going to give you none of the context, and they're not going to explain that even if they did something, it's defensive. You're forcing their oil exports to zero. You're collapsing the economy and trying to force regime change. Of course they're going to fucking respond. If they don't respond, they're sitting ducks. So maybe they did do it. But if they did do it, they did it simply because as a reaction to the U.S. trying to force their oil exports to zero and ripping up the Iran deal. So it's defensive if they did do it. But even if they did it, it wasn't as the U.S. described. So they're already lying about the mechanics, even if Iran did it. And again, if Iran did it, the answer is stop forcing their oil exports to zero. Stop pulling out of the Iran deal. Make peace. And then everything would be fine. But they're not going to do that. The U.S. is not going to do that. Do you believe that Warren or Biden will win the nomination, or do you believe Bernie will win? Also, can you explain why you support a UBI system? Thanks. So do I believe, I think that Bernie is most likely to win of the three you gave me there. I think Warren is second most likely to win it. I think Bernie has the edge over Warren, but I do think it's possible Warren gets the nomination. I really don't think Biden's going to get the nomination, but who knows? I could be proven wrong. Why do I support a UBI system? Because I think people are screwed in this country. People are living under the poverty line. People need help, and a direct cash transfer is something I support. Something I support. I used to support what's called a negative income tax, which is like, okay, you give the money to the people who need it, the people at the bottom. So instead of having a progressive tax rate where like the rate starts at 10%, then goes up to 15, then goes up to 20 when you climb the economic ladder, I support instead now a UBI system for the simple fact that it is universal, and something that's universal is much harder to cut. So they can't describe it as a welfare program. A negative income tax system they can describe as a welfare program. A UBI system they can if it's truly universal. Now, where I differ from Yang is I would do UBI on top of the social safety net. He sounds like in the long term, his goal is to totally replace the social safety net with what would be a more meager, a more meager program of $1,000 a month. So it's actually a net benefit cut, and it gets rid of the social safety net and replaces it with just a UBI payment. No, I'm in favor of a UBI payment on top of the social safety net. So that's my take on it. You should debate the YouTuber Nightmare Fuel. He's a leftist who's strongly critical of non-interventionism and has many videos attacking you. Never heard of the guy. Please explain Elizabeth Warren transferring or accepting corporate PAC money of $10 million. Thank you. I love the show. People keep bringing this up. I haven't seen anything on this, so I can't talk about it. Yeah, I can't talk about that. I have no idea what the fuck people are talking about. Would I be surprised? No. But do I think that means that she is not going to go after Wall Street and she's not going to do the wealth tax that she wants? Like, no, I think she's actually pretty leftist on economic issues. So I don't worry about where her loyalties are on economic issues. I do worry about it on foreign policy, but that's because of her record. Her record's been horrible on foreign policy. But yeah, I don't know anything about this story. I guess this is something that broke while I was away. So yeah, I can't really comment any further. Anyway, next. Hi, Kyle. Thank you for your content. I respect your approach to discussing sensitive issues logically. What are 3 huge issues in the world, in your opinion? In the world? Okay, that's interesting. So now you're saying not U.S. focused, but world focused. Okay. In the world, we're going climate change, obviously, huge one. We're going U.S. militarism, so U.S. imperialism. We're like the bully of the world, obviously. And extreme poverty. Extreme poverty. So those are the three huge issues in the world, in my opinion. And they could all be addressed with relatively simple approaches that we would, of course, never do without mass mobilization. Pac-Man on JRE, quote, won't listen to progressives. How about you? Oh, I know what you're talking about. When he said, I don't listen to other progressives because I don't want it to poison my own opinion. And what Rogan responded was actually really interesting. Rogan was like, oh, so you're a comic. Like, that's what comics do. Comics don't want to listen to other comics because they don't want to end up stealing their cadence or stealing their jokes. So, no, I don't totally agree with Pac-Man. I don't like totally, lock out all of the progressive shows, but I do not watch that much of it. So, like, here, I'll give you a general breakdown. I'll watch maybe 1 David Pac-Man video a week. I'll watch maybe 2 Jimmy Dore videos a week. I'll watch maybe 1 Sam Cedar video every 2 weeks. I'll watch maybe 1 Michael Brooks video a week. I'll watch maybe, did I say TYT yet? Maybe 1 TYT video a week. I limit it. I limit my diet of other progressive news shows. And I think I limit it probably for the same reason that David Pac-Man does, but it wasn't a conscious decision. It was subconscious. It was more like I naturally kind of said, let me not watch that much of this because I want to have my own, make my own mind up and not be influenced by anybody's opinion. But yeah, I watch more progressive media than he does, but I don't watch that much of it because probably for the same reason he said. He doesn't want to, he wants his own thoughts to be his own thoughts. So anyway, thoughts on Alabama castration. I already spoke about that. You can rewind when this is over. I grew up as a fundy, I think fundamentalist, that means in a hard right-wing anarcho-capitalist. Discovered secular talk and Noam Chomsky around the same time. You changed everything. Thanks. Thank you, man. Shout out to Alex. Appreciate that, man. That's really cool of you to say. Yeah, Chomsky was a big intellectual influence on me as well. Reading Chomsky, going on YouTube and watching clips of Noam Chomsky, doing interviews and stuff. he really blew my mind and made me think about things in an interesting way. You know, if you're like a milquetoast centrist, watch some Chomsky stuff and you'll change really quickly. And yeah, I'm happy you had the same experience. I remember when I was in like high school or something, I spoke to a professor, and the professor was like, I think I asked the professor, like, who do you listen to? Who do you read that's most interesting to you? And he said something like, there's this dude who they won't allow on mainstream media anymore because he's that good. And I was like, whoa, what? And that's when I learned about Chomsky, and I was, enthralled ever since then. Hey Kyle, I'm trying to start a progressive protest against a war with Iran. Do you think protests will have an effect, or will the war machine just do what it wants? No, I think they do have an effect. I think protests always have an effect because it's a clear sign to the government that the people are not with you. And when it gets to the point where it scares them, oh, it has an effect for sure. When they feel like there's no way I can win re-election if I do this, when they feel like, oh my God, this is like on the verge of becoming violent. Now, again, that doesn't condone violence. I'm not for violence. I've always been crystal clear about that. When politicians get afraid, like, oh, maybe some violence will happen, yeah, they're more likely to do what you want them to do. That's pretty much proven historically. So yeah, I think protesting is a good thing, and I support your protest. It was a while ago, but I disagree with your opinion. There were violence on both sides. Antifa is the reason for the alt-right on the rise. Their violent tactics are excuses to play the victim. No, I don't agree with that at all. No. See, it's funny because people accuse me of like being like giving a pass to Antifa or something. And it's like, no, I've actually literally in debates. I think I had this debate with, I don't know if it was Hassan and Destiny or just Hassan, but I was like, no, those tactics are the problem. I don't believe in those tactics are on principle. They're wrong. So in other words, if you call yourself anti-fascist, but you're using violence and you're using authoritarian tactics, well, yeah, there's a reason why sometimes people say the anti-fascists are acting like fascists. Yeah, because you're agreeing with the authoritarianism. You're saying it's okay for me to use violence when the ends justify the means, when it's for good reasons, okay? And I don't agree with that. And it's not just me. Noam Chomsky said he thinks Antifa are a gift to the right because, yeah, it's violence. Like, you're using violent tactics while proclaiming violence is wrong. It's self-contradictory, it's immoral, it's dumb, it's stupid, it's not right. But you're doing the opposite. What you're doing is you're saying, well, it's the right-wingers are just, they're just responding to Antifa. No, Nazi's gonna Nazi. Like, literal Nazis and literal white supremacists, they're gonna do those things too. Like, their violence is kind of embedded in their ideology. So I give a pass to nobody. I'm against those tactics on principle, which is why I've called out the left when I think they embrace those tactics. But let's not get it twisted. Like, let's not pretend like, oh, the right they're just the victims. Oh, please. Oh, please. If they espouse an odious ideology and part of their ideology is violence, then yeah, they believe in those things. It's not like, oh, woe is them. They're just responding to big bad Antifa. So yeah, that's my take on that. Did you see AOC say there are concentration camps? I didn't see that. I don't know what she was talking about. But I'm sure this is probably another situation where she's wildly being taken out of context, and she's probably right about whatever the fuck she was saying. Because every time there's been a scandal where, oh my God, she said this, you actually look at what she said and you're like, oh, she's right. Like, why is everybody acting like she's wrong? I'm actually like, I honestly believe that if I was in her shoes, there would be less outrage and less scandals if I said the exact same things that she said. Because it's just so easy for them to smear a lefty democratic socialist, self-described democratic socialist, although I think she's a social democrat, but self-described democratic socialist Latina from New York City. It's so easy for them to fearmonger over everything she says. Whereas if I were to say it like a boring standard ass white dude who doesn't back down, I don't think the Fox News smear machine could work as much because I just fucking sun them and put them in their place. Whereas she has to like walk this tightrope because there's things expected of her because of who she is. Been watching for 4 years, Kyle. Keep up the good work. Thank you. I've been really intrigued and find it funny listening to Kyle and Corn and hearing the slang words you use when you say each other are bugging. When you say something is weary. Can you define what you mean by those two? No, I can't. I can't do that. I'm sorry. No, seriously though, I kind of can't. When you say you're bugging, that's like saying you're crazy. Like, what do you mean? That's wrong. Like, you're bugging. That's what you're bugging means. And when something is weary, that means it's like, we mean weird. Now, I know weary doesn't mean weird, but that's how we use it. Like, that's mad weary. Like, that's creepy. That's like saying that's creepy. Again, that's not the actual definition, but that's how we use it. So, yeah. We got a lot of that. We got a lot of those. They're not New Yorkisms because nobody else does it in New York. People say bugging in New York sometimes, but they don't say weary like we say weary. And they don't say butter like Corin says butter. Like when he goes, oh, it's butter. He means like that was cool. That was chilling. That was like I was relaxing. He's like sometimes he'll be like, dude, I just like went to the sauna and then I took a shower and now I'm in the butter zone. And that just means he's like laying in his bed and he's chilling and he just feels great. Some of those things are things we just made up. Other ones are we've heard, like bugging, and we didn't make that up. We kind of made up weary in the context we use it, and he made up butter zone, or he heard it from somebody else. But yeah, some of the things we say are they're very our own things, I guess. Which political opponent do you deeply respect despite differences in worldview? / Swedish liberal conservative. I don't know what the / Swedish liberal conservative means. If you mean respect in terms of getting stuff done, I mean, the Republicans always get their way. So Mitch McConnell, he always gets his way. So you got to give him props for that. Dick Cheney always got his way. You got to give him props for that. He became the most powerful person in the world, not through force of his personality, but force of his Machiavellian politics. Trump, just fucking literally on his own narcissism, okay? On his own narcissism and endless energy given him by Adderall, he became the most powerful person in the world. Literally. Sheer, raw, unadulterated, pure narcissism mixed with Adderall, and that dude became the most powerful person in the world. Amazing. So I respect that stuff, but I hate all of them, obviously, because of their ideology is very odious and terrible and bad for everybody. Assuming Bernie wins primary, what should his strategy be against Trump? That's a great question. Here's the answer. Exactly what his strategy was in the primary. Stick to there ain't going to be no damn pivot, okay? Trump didn't pivot and Trump won the general. There's going to be no damn pivot. Bernie Sanders is going to be Bernie Sanders. He's going to talk about Medicare-for-All. He's going to talk about free college. He's going to talk about a living wage. He's going to talk about ending the wars. He's going to hit Trump with substance. He's going to say your tax cut was nothing but a giveaway to the rich. Why did you say you were anti-establishment when all you're doing is the establishment's bidding? He's going to crush him. If it's Bernie versus Trump in the general, it's over. You don't even need to have an election. It's over. Like, you don't need to have the run up to the voting day. You can just have, okay, Bernie won the primary. Now let's vote in the general. Bernie wins in a landslide. Over. Hi, Kyle. Will the U.S. ever be like us in Norway? I hope so. I fucking hope so. That's what I'm fighting for. I'm fighting for the U.S. to be like Norway. That's it. That's my whole goal. And then when that happens, I'll fucking pack it up, call it a day, lay on a beach and, drink a nice alcoholic beverage. Hopefully one that has like pretty colors in it, like it's bright fucking blue or bright pink or some shit. Probably be delicious. Warren's not a progressive. Give her the smoke, bruh. Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with her on foreign policy, but I don't think we should tear her down in every way because she's good on Wall Street, she's good on taxes, and she might be the nominee. And if she is the nominee, yeah, you bet your ass I'll vote for her if she's the nominee. And I'll argue with people if you don't vote for her if she's the nominee. I'll say I really disagree with that. Now, everybody gets to make up their own mind, so I can never tell other people how to vote, but I will give you my arguments as to why I would do that if she wins the general. There's some Democrats who, if they win the general, I'm going to be like, yikes. People argue over Bernie's jobs for all and Yang's freedom dividend. Why can't we have both? From your lips to God's ears. I mean, again, I disagree with the way Yang constructed his UBI, but I support UBI. So, yeah. Since you know AOC, who knows Bernie, have you thought about asking her for a favor to get him on the phone so you can offer to help with messaging? Yeah, no, I have some connections to his campaign, but he's a little busy at the moment. I don't think he wants to talk to a loudmouth 31-year-old. Damn, I'm 31. It sounds crazy saying that. I don't think he wants to talk to a loudmouth YouTuber like myself. I think he can kind of figure things out on his own, But that being said, I do have some connections to his campaign, and every now and then I have conversations with certain people in his campaign. So, guys, listen, I think he's generally doing a good job. I mean, there's been a few times where I thought, oh, you're going in the wrong direction. But most of the time, I've seen Bernie's strategy recently, and I've been like, oh, shit. All right, do you, dog. You're doing your thing. So I wouldn't worry too much. Have you noticed how left-wing the Reddit community is and now right-wing YouTube is? Guess conservatives don't like reading. No, I haven't realized that. I'm not a Reddit guy. I haven't been on Reddit. The YouTube thing, I mean, you're right and you're wrong. Yes, there's a lot of right-wing commentators on YouTube. Yes, they're very popular, but it is also like undersold how good the left is doing on YouTube. I mean, also Twitch. Destiny's on Twitch, but there's a lot of lefties on YouTube who are, we have sizable following. So, it's a little bit not offensive. That's not the right word. But it's a little bit reductive and silly when, like, the New York Times wrote that article about Caleb Kane, and he was acting like, and they said in the article, like, there isn't as much of a left-wing influence on YouTube. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? What are you talking about? They're just disregarding, like, all of us who've been doing nothing but talking left-wing politics for the past fucking 5 years or more, and they're just acting like we don't exist. Like, how many stories did you guys tell me just in this secular talking smack where you were like, hey, man, you deconverted me from right-wing beliefs or from being religious or whatever it might be? Now, multiply that times however many we actually converted. Is that nothing? No, that's something. And, like, it's a little annoying when that's ignored because the sexy story is like, ooh, the right-wingers are making people assholes. So, yeah, I don't know. We never get our due, if you notice that. We never get our due. We never got our due for creating Justice Democrats. We never get our due for, doing what we do with left-wing commentary and making, some people in the younger generation lean more left, maybe. So we can't win. No matter what, we can't win. But that's the price you pay for being an outsider. And the right-wingers get the coverage because they think it's edgy. The mainstream media thinks it's edgy and sexy when people have, like, gross ideas like, minorities are inferior. They're like, ooh, that's evil. Let's cover that. Whereas we're over here talking about how we should have Medicare-for-All. And they're like, yawn, boring, giving people healthcare. Fuck off. So, yeah. Anyway. Hey, Kyle, can I get a beta? Shout out, like Jesse Lee Peterson. How do you respond to people who say we can't have Medicare for all because we don't have enough doctors? Yeah, I just don't think that's true. It's not like, it's not like there was a collapse in fucking Canada or Australia or the UK because they allowed, since they have a single payer system, it's like, well, our health system collapsed because we don't have enough doctors. No, it'll all work out in the long run. Will there be kinks? Will there be things that we need to iron out? Absolutely. Is everything going to be perfect? No, not off the bat. But it's the answer. We know it's the answer, and we know that we have to address it. There are other things that are issues too. What about the job loss related to the health insurance industry? That's a serious issue. Does that mean we shouldn't do Medicare for all? No. It means, we need to have these long conversations and hard conversations about what exactly needs to be done in order to mitigate the downsides of moving to a system like this. But we know it's the right system because right now the status quo is what we're used to, but it's the worst of all worlds. Like, what we live in right now is the worst of all worlds. So that's how I'd respond to that. Why do you think Bernie doesn't get specific with his debt cancellation plan? I don't know. I mean, there are certain things that are in his wheelhouse that he goes to immediately that he's more comfortable talking about. But yeah, I mean, I guess you can make a case for maybe throwing in new things and other things that he can go into more detail about. But I guess that's just a little bit further down on his priorities list compared to Medicare for all and stuff like that. What happens when Trump loses 2020? He refuses to step down. In all honesty, who would stop him? Who has stopped him up to this point? Billy, I'm not really worried about that because I think that that's kind of a made-up issue. And this happened under Obama, too, where you had Rush Limbaugh saying he's not going to step down if he loses and all that stuff. I just don't think that's true. I think as terrible Trump is, I think he'd step down if he lost. I do. He was actually asked the question one time, and he said, he was like, no, I'd step down. And so there were like a bunch of commentators who were like, he's not going to step down. And then I remember watching the video, and he was asked, like, would you step down in that situation? And he was like, yeah, of course. So I was like, I don't know where people get this stuff from. I mean, I get it. He's a petty authoritarian and he has those impulses, but he's also like a man baby. And, I think that he'd be pissed, but he'd be like, okay, we're stepping down. So, and if he doesn't do it, I mean, what would happen? He doesn't have a choice, bro. He would have to go. Like, he doesn't have a choice. Like, what's going to happen is he's going to be fucking escorted out. Like, that's what happens. We're the United States of America. He doesn't get to throw a temper tantrum and stay in. So, in a worst case scenario, he'd be escorted out. But yeah, I think he would step down if he lost. How long do you cook baked potatoes and at what temperature? Frankie, I have no idea because I don't cook shit, like anything at all. People bash Spencer, even though a lot of his ideals fall with the socialist left. Worker-owned co-ops, universal healthcare, free college. Why is he wrong for wanting that stuff for whites when a black me saying the same for my people is A-okay? Well, first of all, let's be serious. I have no idea if this person is black. They're probably not. Anybody who asks that question is probably not black. But anyway, I digress from that. He's not wrong for wanting worker-owned co-ops and universal healthcare and free college if he wants that. I have no idea if he actually wants that. He's wrong because he's a bigoted asshole who wants ethno-state. That's why he's wrong. And let's say you're a black separatist and you want a nation of only black people, I would say that's wrong too. Yeah, if you want to create like a fucking black ethno-state and you want to have like, you know, hey, we have all the right policies in this black ethno-state, but if Kyle Kulinski tries to come into the ethno-state, we're going to kick him out. Why? Because he's white. Yeah, no, that's wrong. You shouldn't be able to do that. You know, like if somebody like really kick out all people of other races, that's bigotry. That's what that is. And I'm against bigotry. So it's not like the reason why people don't like Richard Spencer is like, fucking Richard Spencer, he keeps advocating for universal healthcare. No, nobody ever criticized him in that way. People criticize him because he's a bigoted asshole who wants to have a white ethno-state. And setting up a state based simply on fucking skin color is fucking gross and dumb and stupid. And by the way, the idea that would solve problems, I love how stupid these guys are. I'm reminded of Matthew Heimbach, the guy who started this like Nazi-ish party, but it was also like a workers' party. So he was trying to be like lefty on some issues, but also just super racist and Nazi-like. And I remember him making an argument. He was talking about how like, well, we don't like Trump anymore because Donald Trump, you know, he's doing the bidding of Goldman Sachs. He's doing the bidding of the establishment. He's doing the bidding of Wall Street. He's doing the bidding of the military-industrial complex. And I'm sitting there listening. I'm like, oh, shit. All right. The guy's making sense. And then he goes, you know, and that's why we need to create our ethno-state. And I'm like, bro, you were just talking about how the military-industrial complex is the problem and Wall Street's the problem. Go do me a favor. Go look at the demographic makeup on Wall Street. What do you think the numbers are, bruh? What do you think the numbers look like? It's like 99% white. So you're admitting in your own argument where you call for an ethno-state, you're admitting that, hey, having a purely white country, it's not like that solves all of our problems. Wall Street's like 99% white, and they're one of the most fucked up places in the fucking country, okay? So just because you set up an ethno-state doesn't mean magically everything works. No, because white people still have problems like anybody else. So it's just so fucking stupid. So that's the problem with him, is that he's bigoted. It's not that he wants fucking free college. I don't even know if he wants that, but if he does want that, that's not the problem with him. Yang's UBI will include Social Security, Medicare, and single payer. He is talking about cutting the programs because less people will use it. He said to Rubin pretty clearly that in the long run, the idea would be replacing the social safety net with his freedom dividend. And there are people who get through the social safety net more than $1,000 a month. So if somebody's getting $1,400, okay, through the social safety net, $1,500 because they're disabled, and he says, let's replace disability and just have the freedom dividend, that person is taking a $500 pay cut now, aren't they? So that's the problem. That's the problem with that. And he said this on Rubin. It's not me saying it. He said it. And I didn't like that I heard it, but that's what he said. So what do you want me to do? Kyle, you're awesome. If you do more debates with right-wingers, you will reach more people like Kane. Also, there's a clip of you in Leaf of Faith on Netflix. I saw that, but it was so short, man. It was such a short clip. I was a little sad, especially because, you know, I like Kratom. So they did this Kratom documentary, and I'm in it, but it's such a small amount. And I was like, yo, you should have fucking talked to me, man. Like, I would have talked about this shit. I love that stuff. I definitely have used it more than like Rogan has used it, and Rogan was more prominent in the documentary. Although to be fair, Rogan had on the guy who did the film, so that's probably why Rogan was in it a lot more. But yeah, anyway. Should we be worried about Biden and Buttigieg? No and no, not at all. Should the left adopt tougher immigration standards so we can protect the American worker from cheap labor? This has helped Denmark's left-wing party win the recent election and cut the far-right support in half. So here's my response to that. As somebody who's on the left, I think we should have borders, but you should have a liberal, humanitarian, open-minded, reasonable, moral approach to dealing with the flow of migrants. That's my take on it. Now, does that mean we should be clear that we don't support totally open borders? Sure, absolutely. but I think you should be equally as clear that you are humane and that you're not in favor of like a draconian, reactionary, far right, strict, asshole-ish type system. So that's my take on that. I have no problem with the left saying, I'm not for open borders. That's not that hard. That's not a high bar. That's not like, that's not an insane position. I think that's an incredibly reasonable position. But I wouldn't make like anti-immigration like a cornerstone of a left-wing approach, because I think that that's I don't agree with like, a shut the borders approach or a very strict immigration approach. I agree with having borders, but being open-minded in reaction to the flow of migrants. Opinion on Switzerland's version of universal healthcare. Apparently, it is higher rated than the government-provided healthcare. It is private but universal, and 100% of the country is covered. Yeah, so I don't know that much about Switzerland. I do know that the French system is public funding of private institutions, which it sounds similar to what you're talking about with Switzerland. I know the UK is public funding of public institutions. I know that in one study, the UK ranked the highest. And again, they're public funding of public institutions. And in one study, the French system ranked the highest. They're public funding of private institutions. In my mind, I honestly do not care how we get to a Medicare-for-All system where everybody's covered. I just want a Medicare-for-All system. I want a single-payer system. So in other words, I'll take anything. I'll take public funding of public institutions or public funding of private institutions. So I'll accept this system like in Switzerland. My only thing that I would say is you have to start the negotiation by asking for a UK-style system with public funding of public institutions, because then the compromise position becomes public funding of private institutions, which is still single-payer. So that's all I'll say to that. Top 10 favorite YouTube channels. Oh, shit, man. I can't do it. I can't do it. I've never made a ranking in my head like that. I will say this, though. Since I'm such an avid golfer, I watch a lot of golf YouTube channels. And I know you guys will make fun of me, blah, blah, blah. I've heard it before a zillion times. Don't care. I'm a big golfer. I love golf. I think that if a lot of you tried it, you'd enjoy it too. So I watch a lot of the golf YouTube channels. Shout out to my buddy Peter Finch. He's a golfer, and he's a great YouTuber. He's a great player, and I've had some conversations with him, and he's a real nice guy. Shout out to Mark Crossfield. I watch a lot of his content. Yeah, so I watch a lot of golf. Harry Flowers, another one, like a young British guy. James Wiltshire. They're all British dudes. Like most of the golf YouTubers are British dudes. So shout out to all the golf YouTubers out there. I cannot give you a ranking of my top 10 for the simple reason that I haven't really ever done a list of the order of who my favorite is, who my second favorite, who my third favorite, so on and so forth. But what I will say is I watch all of the progressive YouTubers that you guys know. I just limit my diet of them because I want to make up my own mind. I think that's probably the main reason why I do it. And outside of that, it's just a lot of golf stuff. And what else? I don't know. Let me actually pull it up if I can. Let's see if I can give any, It's funny. The first thing that's trending is your current live stream. So I see just a big thing of my face, which is pretty funny. I still watch Rogan quite a bit. And some of his podcasts. Oh, Joey Diaz, I have to shout out. Joey Diaz is literally one of my favorite people because he's just so fucking funny, man. He's so funny. What else I got? Let me click on subscriptions, see what pops up. So when I go to subscriptions, it's all progressive content. Every now and then I watch Live at the Bike, which is a poker, Texas Hold'em poker live stream type thing. Shout out to those guys. I think that's pretty cool. I follow a lot of poker guys too. I watch them every now and then. A guy named Johnny Vibes, who's a poker pro. A guy named Brad Owen. A guy named Andrew Nemi. These are all like poker people. More progressive stuff, more golf stuff, more progressive stuff, more golf stuff. I watch TJ Kirk's podcast with Paul's Ego and Scotty, Deep Fat Fried. They were just demonetized, by the way, which is totally not cool. Yeah, and I don't really watch any WWE videos, but I'm subscribed to them, so they pop up on my feed quite a bit. Yeah, so anyway. I'm even subscribed to some odious guys who I'll watch their stuff every now and then just to see what silly nonsense they're saying, like Stefan Mahler. Yeah, okay. Okay, I gotta go, guys. I've been I got to pee so bad, and I've been doing this for such a long time. But anyway, I love you guys. Thanks so much for all the super chats. I really appreciate it. I'm sorry that I couldn't get to all of them, but obviously, as you guys probably know, it's like literally impossible to get to everyone. But anyway, I really appreciate it, guys. I love you. The show is back on Thursday, bitches. So it's Tuesday now. Yeah, tomorrow's Wednesday, then Thursday. So anyway, love you guys. I will see you on Thursday, and everybody enjoy the rest of your day. Peace.